And Megan Fox here at PJ Media is explaining.
What's tip 4?
Well, don't trust women. I think you just touched on that with your Dancing with the Stars.
You can still love me.
I do. I love you all the time. But
Our First Amendment rights are huge. They are very important to me. They should be important to everyone.
don't be a public official if you don't want to be filmed, ma'am.
Megan Fox.
Yes.
Well, I forgot to take down the background. I always do this. Because I'm a boomer. I boomered the stream. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Megan Fox with pjmedia.com. And I am here on a chilly winter morning in New York. It is cold in my office today, but it's going to get nice and warm in here with good conversation with good friends. I have a brand new cup of coffee. For those of you who don't know, get wrecked, YouTube. I'm back. You cannot keep me down. YouTube banned, they suspended me for a week and gave me my first strike on my channel. And it was bullshit. It was complete bullshit. They had to overturn it, but they cost me 4 days of revenue, and I'm still waiting for my check, which I doubt I will get. However, I'm back. You can't keep me down, YouTube. I am back. All right, now, coming to the program live is one of our favorites, defense attorney Steve Gosney from Florida. How are you?
Yes, we have a cold winter here. I went outside and it was 71.
Oh, shut up.
And I had to wear my sweater. It was terrible.
Had to wear a little hoodie.
A hoodie. I was freaking 71. They said tomorrow night it might actually get to 69.
Oh, no.
I know. So we're pulling out the sweaters and the jackets.
It's funny. I don't understand living in a place that has no seasons. I don't think I could do it.
We do. It's hot, and then it's blustery and wet, and then it's hot again. And occasionally we'll get cold snaps where it's wet and cold for like 12 hours, and then it'll just be wet and miserable. That's our winters. Daytona winters are kind of. But we have the best springs and falls in Daytona. When Bike Week, people don't know. Here, I'll give you a little inside secret into Daytona Beach, is that Bike Week and Race Week, which is February, and Bike Week is in March, and then a Biketoberfest, they schedule those at the best weather in Daytona. So if you come here, though, everybody thinks, oh, this is paradise. The weather is perfect. Well, those are like the polarities, right? Those are the ones that when you get into the heat of summer,
there's nothing worse than Florida in the summer. Absolutely nothing worse. Nothing worse.
It's uninhabitable.
It's
without
so
air
bad.
Conditioner. Yeah.
And the only times we've ever taken our kids to Disney World has been like in July, which is the absolute worst time to ever be in Florida ever. It was like 112 degrees in the shade. It is absolutely absurd. Don't go to Florida in the summer. If you're going to go in the winter, go in like February. But good Lord, no, not in the summer. I don't know how you handle it. I really don't.
Air conditioning.
Right. My parents live in Arizona. They live in Scottsdale. And again, same thing. Arizona in the summer is just like, it's like walking into the doorway of hell. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And you go from one air conditioning building to the next. And yeah. So my dad's not real thrilled about what just happened there in Arizona, as you can imagine.
Yes, he's right in dead center of election fraud central, right?
I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but it sure looks like election suspicion. I'll tell you what, it's suspicious to me. I don't know if I can go as far as saying fraud because we never catch them. So is it fraud if they don't get caught?
Well, let's just say that I'm a believer in having the most ironclad, cheat-proof system we can possibly have. And to me, that would be paper ballots marked on the day of the election only. You come in, you show up, you show your ID, you get registered, you put a ink mark on your finger.
Ink mark on your finger. Yep.
And you vote once by paper so that when it counts for the machine and you have a question, you can go back and recount the paper ballots that are kept under lock and key. That to me is election integrity. And why would anybody be against that?
I don't know. I mean,
Just
I don't know
honor
if you
me.
know this, but my dad has some thoughts on that. We, we,
I've
I
not
had.
seen your dad. I've heard about your dad.
Oh, you haven't seen? Well, my
Haven't
dad
seen
has
him.
some thoughts on that that should be heard. Here, let's. I'll play it for you because I think my dad's thoughts are absolutely perfect. He called me the other night on FaceTime, and I hit the record button because I knew he was about to go off.
This country not have a goddamn holiday once a year. That's the time you vote. If you don't show up and vote, up your ass. You don't get. You don't get. I don't care if you're in the hospital. Tough shit. Crawl there. But that's it. One day, 12 hours, and then you're done. And
Is this mom here too?
Yeah.
You know who the hell won.
I'm with you.
I love it. He's great. I love it.
We're in line, and guys are walking up with envelopes, and putting them in that thing. Why do they have to vote at home? What a lot of crap.
Right.
I don't know. You're
Oh,
My dad's 81 years old, and he
Wonderful.
shows up to vote in person. Like what?
my
Why
mom is 87,
Wow.
and she shows up. She has 2 jobs. My mom is incredible. No, I love it because you get old enough, and it's like, look, I'm tired of being sugarcoating. I'm going to tell you directly. I don't have enough time to beat around the bush.
My dad's always been like that.
He's
He
great.
didn't have to get old to do that.
Are they in New York also?
No, they're in Phoenix. They're in Scottsdale.
Oh, right, you said that right.
Yeah, they're from. We're all from Chicago. My dad's a Chicago-born boy, and you can tell.
Great. I love him.
He's so
My
funny.
kind of guy.
I know he's great. So tell me, because I really dig attorneys. Obviously, I'm like LawTube adjacent, because some of my favorite people on earth are attorneys. Actually, all of my favorite people are attorneys. And
Are you married to an attorney?
no, but my sister's an attorney. My mother's an attorney. All my good friends are attorneys. I don't know why. It just turns out that way. Because I guess what I do, I cover a lot of court drama, and I cover family court and court corruption. And in my opinion, some of the worst people on earth and the best people on earth are lawyers. As it turns out that they're some of the worst and the best people that you'll ever meet. And so in my coverage of family court cases, I just got close to a lot of different lawyers that I would call, for expertise in certain things. And I would call my sister and find out, like, is this normal? Because my sister's been a guardian ad litem. And I would call her and be like, is this something that guardians do? And she'd be like, what? No. So I just have been around lawyers a lot, and I just find them to be either the worst people on earth or the best people that you ever meet. And it just depends. So tell me how you decided to get involved in defense law.
Wow. Well, this is a long question. How much time do you allot to
As
the
much
answer
as
to this
you
question?
want. As much as you want.
Well, okay, let's see. Back, I was a wee child of, no,
I was born.
I was born. Well, I was born and raised in Daytona Beach. Okay, my dad is a lawyer and was an insurance defense lawyer for 40 some years. And actually, he hired 5 people out of law school for his firm that eventually became judges in this area. But I was raised by my mom. I was raised by a single mother, and that's a whole nother topic. So I was really estranged from my dad for a lot of important parts of my life. We didn't get along, and I never really wanted to be a lawyer. I went to college. I was a history major at Stetson University, kind of was a middle of the road student because of all my family issues I was dealing with. And it took me a long time to find myself. I thought I'd be a history teacher, and I got my history teaching credential, and I lasted 1 day in the public school, high schools.
No.
Yes. I went the one time, and everybody was like, by the 6th period of the class, I was a substitute. The class, the word had gotten out that this Doogie Howser was teaching in high school, and boy, they were abusing me, and it was horrible. So I did 1 day.
Oh, my mother was a teacher too, and she was an English teacher, and she looked like she was 16 when she was 21. So
Right.
she looked like a student, and in fact, she would have teachers in the hallway yelling at her, and she'd be like, "I'm a teacher." No one would believe her.
Right.
And yes, it was pretty bad. She had some very bad stories about
Especially
teaching
in high school,
Yeah.
So anyway, that failed miserably.
You really quit after one day?
Yes, but I was lost. I really didn't. I
Steve.
was like, what do I do with a history major? How about teach? Like,
Yeah.
okay. So I got my teaching credential, and it didn't work.
You should have
And
started
so,
in junior high. They're a little less awful in junior high.
well, then my mom was the executive director for the local Realtors Association. And somehow she was able to maneuver that I would do that. So I went to the work for the Realtors Association as her assistant. And I did newsletters mostly. I published a newsletter, communications, and actually we won a National Realtors Association award for our publications when I was there. So I worked there for about 3.5 years. And then the local Home Builders Association recruited me to become their executive officer. So I became CEO of our Volusia County Home Builders Association. And I did that. And that was really where I kind of got my identity, I should say. I really became lobbyists, and we also won a national award for communications at the Home Builders Association. So I took kind of what I had learned from the realtors, brought it in, and then we had lobbying, we had lawyers, we had lawsuits, we had a parade of homes, we did all kinds of stuff. And at the end of I did 3.5 years there and really did great things there. I'm real proud of what I did with that group. And they offered me a contract. And I said, well, do I really want to be doing the same old stuff for the next 10 years? Right. And so I said, not really. Law was something that was interesting. It was there available for me. And at that point, I was on good terms with my dad. So he offered to pay for some of my tuition, which was he had never done my whole life. I was like, he didn't give me one red cent. They always thought I was the rich kid, and I didn't have anything. We were so poor. But it's like, oh, Dad, okay, because he wanted me to be a lawyer, get away from my mom, right? So I utilized that and leveraged that. And I went to law school. Best decision. I met some of my closest friends there, and I also knew how to work, and I had direction. So I was a very good law student, and went to Washington and Lee in Virginia. Great school, met great people. And then I went into civil practice. It's like, okay, well, now what do I do, right? I got a law degree, and I went to work for this firm, the oldest firm in Florida, over in DeLand, Florida, and did civil litigation. So I did like real estate, contract law, estate litigation, things like that. But I started to get, after 6 years there, I started to get kind of afraid of the courtroom. And as a litigator, you can't be afraid of the courtroom. And I was definitely a litigator. So I was like, well, what do I do to get courtroom experience? Prosecutor's office. So I went over to the prosecutor's office, and I worked there for 6 years, and I was in line to be a capital trial attorney for the prosecutor's office. But there was an election, and the new prosecutor, who's still in, who I don't have anything good to say about, decided that I was not on his team and gave me the heave-ho, right? And I thought I was doing a great job. I didn't know this new elected official, but he fires everybody for no reason. So I was blessed. God was telling me he didn't want me there. And that's a whole nother story about how I found God on that. But then luckily the public defender's office knew who I was. I had a reputation. It picked me up, and came there. And I've been working in criminal appeals now for 12 years. So that's
so public defense is something that has always fascinated me, always. And I think that it's obviously a part of the law that doesn't have the greatest lawyers attracted to it, unfortunately. And although some of them are, some of them are really, really good. Unfortunately, it's a toss-up, between what you get, because you're just assigned somebody, and you have to put your trust and your liberty in the hands of somebody that you don't know. What is it like fighting for people in the public defense office when you're not being paid high amounts of money? Like, what is that like? How does it feel to be, responsible for those people?
Well, I love it. I'd say I have found my place in the appellate division for our office. Now, I will say our office, we have one of the best offices in Florida. And the public defender's office in Florida, the ones that I've dealt with, we have very good people. Now, there is the, occasional people that are lazy, and they can be lazy in that office. But we have our A team is better than anybody.
Well, I hear that it's not necessarily laziness, but it's being overwhelmed with too many cases. That's what I keep hearing. I keep hearing, well, they have so many cases that they can't pay attention to each one the amount that it should be paid attention to.
Well, I'll say, let me just say, in our office, I wouldn't say that's the number one problem. I think there are other offices that are, like in South Florida, where they have so much more volume and hard staffing issues. We have a great office. The Seventh Circuit right here, I think we have the lowest turnover rate in the state of Florida for public defenders' offices. We have an A team of lawyers that are the best you will ever find. And, you know, it is tough to bring in new people at the pay we start them at. That's always tough. But we offer training, expertise, mentoring, support. And the thing when you're in private practice is like you're spending 85% of your time chasing after the dollar and recruiting. So even a private attorney, you may not be, it's like you're still focused on other things other than the case. Whereas one thing I like about doing public defender work is all I do is focus on my clients. I don't have to worry about collecting money. I don't have to worry about politics of it or nothing.
Right.
You know, it's like, but I would say that if I was to criticize our office, it would be that the fact is you can get people that are lazy that get into the position, but we have pretty good management. I mean, that's the exception, not the rule. And they're pretty good about, like, if somebody is performing that way, they'll move them around and try to mentor them and try to counsel them. Let's see, getting people to work for the pay that we have is tough. So a lot of our really good.
Is it bad? Is it not very good?
Good. What do you mean? Pay wise?
Yeah.
Well, I can't complain, but I'm one of the senior guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of have to love it. You don't do it for the money. I mean, I'm not going to get rich at the public defender's office, right?
Yeah.
But I can't complain with my salary. You know, but
What's
I've been there for a long
like,
time.
for instance, one of the problems that I saw in the Cynthia Abcug case that I was following in Colorado, and she had a public defender, was that the prosecution appeared to have an unlimited budget with which to prosecute her with. And her defender kept on telling her, it's not in the budget. We can't get an expert. It's not in the budget.
Right.
We can't. How is that okay?
Well, you are right. There is a disparity in funding between the prosecutors and the public defender's office. But part of that's because prosecutors have to deal with private counsel and public defenders, where we only have public defender clients. I will say that the budget is very limited on expert witnesses when you're talking about something that's a third-degree felony. And budgets are even tight at Capitol, but we can hire experts in death penalty cases and that sort of thing. And
how is it fair for a prosecutor to be able to hire a witness for a third-degree felony, but the defense can't?
Well,
I mean, that's not okay. Without the state's expert, I don't think he would have been able to put her away. In fact, he even admitted to me afterwards and on camera that he couldn't believe that he got the second-degree kidnapping charge.
Who's that, the prosecutor?
Yeah, the prosecutor admitted to me afterwards. Yeah, I was really surprised. I didn't think we were going to get it. If you can say that out loud, perhaps you shouldn't have brought the charge, sir.
No, that's for sure. Well, what's the question on the table? There's a lot of ways we could ask. Go there.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, there should be some level of fairness between the prosecution and the public defense. If you have to use the public defender, the prosecution shouldn't be able to outspend you 2-to-1.
Well, I've been covering this. If I got off legal vices, and we've been covering this first-degree murder trial over in Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, and been following that. And this is like A-game prosecution, A-game defense, great judge, a functional courtroom doing a first-degree murder trial. It's a joy to watch. Everybody's doing great. Now, I will say on a third-degree felony, let's take it out of context here. When you got a public defender's office, you might have 150 to 200 cases in felony division, all right, at one time that you're handling. So what you have to do is you kind of triage your cases. So you say, which cases have defenses and which ones do not? Which ones are really serious and which ones are low-hanging fruit, are kind of for the prosecutor, right? They got them dead to rights. Because there's a lot of guys that say, oh, I want a trial, but it's like, well, what's the defense? They don't have a defense.
Yeah.
So it's about sentence mitigation, right? Well, those cases, and so a third-degree felony is going to get less attention. I'm not saying that they're going to get shortchanged, but they could. if it's really complex and you've got a bunch of cases and it's a third-degree felony, that's a tough situation for a public defender because they might have first-degree felonies and second-degree felonies for guys facing life in prison or 30 years, and here's a third-degree felony. It's like, well, you'll plea out to probation, right? And I'm just kind of giving you the realities of it when you're triaging your cases.
Well,
Now,
they sure treated it like it was a first degree murder case. I'm telling you,
the prosecutors did.
the prosecutors did. Yeah, they
Yeah,
treated
I don't
it
know
this
all
case.
one of the things I really like about you, Megan, is that you cover things that are not just sensational, but that are important.
Yeah, and I kind of fell into this one on accident because
Mhm.
she actually reached out to me when her son was taken.
Mm.
So that was 4 years ago. And I had been covering CPS corruption cases. So I have been following this since the very, very beginning. And everything she said about not getting due process when they took her son, it was all true. I was there witnessing all of it, from not being served properly in the beginning to not getting an evidentiary hearing within 72 hours that she was entitled to, never being able to put evidence in front of a judge, not till 6 months later. And after that, by the time that 6 months hit and she had been separated from her son for all that time, she was so traumatized that she was taken advantage of by a bunch of con men who talked her into leaving the state and not going to that trial. And that's what did it. That's why she lost her son totally, because of those men, those people who are criminals. And that's why I got booted off of YouTube for talking about them. I got booted off of YouTube for mentioning these men with this criminal history that nobody wants to talk about, including the FBI for that matter. This story is so nuts, Steve. It's tied into the 2020 election. It's tied into, I mean, this poor woman got into the eye of a storm that she had no idea she was in.
Well, and I reviewed some of the things you've done a lot of work on this, and
A lot of work.
I completely respect you because you are focused on something that is it's under the radar. It's not as sensational as like, some murder trial, but it's really important. The problems that you're discovering and that you're seeing in the criminal justice system are really widespread. And people do not recognize how flawed our criminal justice system is and how dangerous it is to the liberty of free individuals and out of control. And, people love to bust on defense attorneys and we're the scapegoats for everything. They say, oh,
Not
we hate
me.
you. Well, I know that, but a lot of people,
I love
how can that defense
attorneys.
attorney say that? How can he get up there and defend that person, right? But I mean, if you've got a judge and a prosecutor that are out of line, there's nothing a defense attorney can do. It's frightening.
Okay, so Patricia Heron, who's the judge in Colorado, she has a public rating. I want to show it to you if I can find it, because it is so bad. The public has rated her 100% biased towards the prosecution. And I mean, I sat there and watched it. It was like, wow.
Well, I got so much, I'm so happy on you. We can talk all day, I know, but I look at the system. We have a system, all right? And the system is like a triangle. You have the defense on one side, you have the prosecution on this side, and you have the judge. And then you have a jury kind of through the middle, right? So think about it that way. Now, a defense attorney's job is to advocate for their client. That's their position, all right? The state, their job is not to advocate for guilt. Their job is to advocate for truth and to follow the law. That's different from advocating for guilt. And then the judge is supposed to be an impartial decision maker to apply the law fairly when there's a dispute. Okay, I'm just telling you.
Woman. I'm telling you what. She's on a power trip.
The problems in our criminal justice system do not come from overly aggressive defense attorneys. The problems in our system comes from prosecutors who are overzealous, who overcharge, and who are advocates for guilt and getting skins to put on the wall, and judges who are biased. And here's what I observed during that week I was in court, because I flew out to Colorado to cover this trial. Wow.
I was there. I was inside the courtroom
Colorado?
Douglas County, the 18th district.
Which is what part of where?
Castle Rock.
Oh, Castle Rock, right where Bronca's from.
And if I had known, I would have called him. And oh, my sister's in the chat. She says she loves you, Steve.
Oh, thank you. I love you.
And
too.
she's an appellate attorney too. She's a very good appellate attorney.
Civil or criminal?
But I think she does both. She has done both.
Private practice?
Private practice now. Yeah.
Okay.
She used to work for
where in what jurisdiction?
Maryland. She's in Maryland. I'm not sure which court she works.
Baltimore or the real world?
Baltimore.
Okay. Sorry.
She
I'm
said
sorry
she
to
does,
hear that.
She said she does mostly civil.
Okay.
Mostly civil. But she is, but yeah. So I flew out to Castle Rock. I wanted to be there. Oh, she's telling me she's not in Baltimore. She does Annapolis. So.
Hey, come down to Florida. We got positions in the public defender's office for good attorneys.
But so I was in Castle Rock. I was in the courtroom every day because I really wanted to see how this went down. And the judge had denied us the expanded media coverage. So we did not get cameras in the courtroom. And I knew that they were going to do that. So I had to be there. So I was there every day. And what I witnessed, and here's what bothered me so much. What I witnessed was what appeared to be congenial relationships of coworkers without regard for the people that were on trial. So we had the prosecutor and the defense attorney yucking it up during breaks and patting each other on the back and discussing their Peloton rides. And the judge, yucking it up with the prosecutor, and everybody, and the defense attorney kissing the judge's ass constantly. It was...
Well, let me time out for a second.
It was so hard.
I appreciate your perspective. I'm going to push back against you on this one, right? Because I understand that clients hate that kind of schmoozing. They hate it when the prosecutor and the defense attorney are friendly. They want you to be hating him. And in fact, one of the reasons
for the week, you should be at least have an adversarial position, that we're not friends this week, buddy.
When I was prosecuting, one of my closest friends was the public defender that I was against. And we would go to lunch like every day. We'd hang out. We were good buddies, right? But on trial days, we said, that's our war day. And we said, we don't go out to lunch, and we agree that everything's off limits and we go toe to toe, right?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that you want your defense attorney to be friendly with the judge and the prosecutor because you want the best deals you can get.
Well, so of course, but I'm telling you, it was over the top, Steve.
Well, I've read what you've done, and I understand their problems. I'm just giving you the bigger picture, not the specific case.
It was gross to watch, especially because her defense attorney did not fight for her in any meaningful way. And I was like so hopeful, like, okay, well, maybe tomorrow, maybe he's going to fight for her tomorrow. And like, he just never did. He never did. And it felt very self-serving. Like, it didn't matter what happened to Cindy because, her defense attorney was going to have to go back into that courtroom tomorrow and the day after and the day after that with other people in front of that judge. And he wasn't about to piss where he eats. Period. And
well, yes,
he should have fought that judge multiple times when she was refusing any objection of his. And it would be hilarious when the prosecutor would stand up and go, objection. He would have no speaking objection. He would not say what he was objecting about. And before the defense can even respond, the judge would go, sustained. Every time. And then the defense was left going, well, what was the objection? What was it? And then they would have a hushed, sidebar, and the defense would lose every time. And no one would hear what the objection was. I've never seen anything like that. And she did it every time.
I've been there. And I will say, one of the things is that I'm sort of a scorched earth litigator, defense attorney. Clients really love me because I go toe to toe. But that's one of the reasons I'm in appeals, because I was not good at making deals. I was like, I would look at, I'm like, this is, I would just go balls to the wall on everything, right? And so that was like, you need to go to appeals.
That's how everybody wants their defense attorney to be. Nobody wants their defense attorney to be a wishy-washy, get along guy. Like, that's not what you want.
Well, let me push back on that, because I appreciate your perspective. But see, one of my best friends who just passed away recently was a defense attorney. He was a defense attorney in Flagler County, right? He was in our office. One of the nicest guy named Mac Brunton. He was a former pro golfer, PGA golfer. And he was the nicest guy. He'd drink and he's like, come on, give me the deal. Let's just go get a burger, right? And he would schmooze these people into such sweet deals for his clients, right? Well, but he hated trials. So what I would do is I'd do all his trials. But I said, if he can't make the deal, then bring in Gosney and I'll crush him, right? So that's what we did. And so I would do his trials and he'd do all the schmoozing. So it depends. If you got a guilty client that's going away, you want the schmoozer who's going to get you the best deal.
Best deal.
Right. So, I mean, there's a place for all of these.
So in this case, they actually offered Cindy a deal before the trial to drop all the charges if she would give up parental rights of her son.
Oof. See, that's not right.
No, it's not. And it's not right. And also, why would the prosecution offer that if they felt she was such a danger to society, which is what the judge said during sentencing, like several times, that she's a danger to people. She's a danger to others and herself. This woman has never done anything to anybody. She's never hurt anyone. And no, it was not a violent crime. The prosecutor kept having to tell the judge, this is not a violent crime. You can't sentence her to that much time because there's no violence here. I mean, thank you, Stephanie, for piping up. Stephanie says that's immoral. Right.
That's right.
They asked her, they said, we'll drop all the charges if you give up your parental rights. Now, come on. Here she is. She thinks, well, I've got at least a shot if I go to trial that I'll be found innocent and then I'll get my son back. What kind of mother would take that deal?
That's horrible. And like I said, I've read some of this. There's a lot of detail and a lot of individual stuff that you've provided, and a lot of different. I mean, it's a complicated case.
It's very complex.
A complicated, complex third-degree felony case. The public defender's office is a tough. That is very dependent on who your prosecutor or the public defender that you get.
And
but I will.
Public defender was just
Yeah.
milk toast.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He called one witness. She had a list of at least 30 people he could have called. She asked him over and over again, why aren't you calling the doctor? Why aren't you calling the two neurologists? He kept saying, I can prove it through their medical records. I can prove it through the records. But
there's
the
so
jury
much that,
didn't care. They didn't care. They wanted to hear from the doctor. They wanted to believe Cindy. And then her defense attorney allowed the prosecution to paint her as a liar, and he never responded. He didn't give the truth to the jury. I could have. I had all the facts.
So what you're saying, you have a passive, unprepared defense attorney, an aggressive, immoral prosecutor, and a pro-state judge. I know that's a horrible thing. And people, I say, I just have faith that the system is gone. I've been in it a long time and I don't believe in the system. It's an inhuman, immoral system full of flawed individuals. And when you get that combination that you're talking about, you're going to get a lot of injustice.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's get into your book.
Thank you. Yes, you got a nice book there. What is that?
Yeah, this is Steve's book, Ideas and Answers in Law. And I have been reading this morning and losing my shit. Listen to this.
I want to see what you're interested in.
Oh, I'm so annoyed by this. I'm so annoyed. Wait, where was it? It's on, where is it? This is about, oh yeah.
Which one?
This is about prisons that are for profit or charging inmates for their incarceration.
Oh, right.
Right.
That's a current. Yeah.
Which is what is happening to Cindy right now, by the way. And you guys, I have dropped the GoFundMe in the chat. Cindy, her friend Ken has set up a GoFundMe for her. And this is going towards all the things she needs while she's in her mandatory 60-day stay in jail. Because apparently you can't even get wool socks in winter in Colorado as a prisoner in jail. You have to buy them. They give you flip-flops and bare feet in the winter in Colorado. I'm sorry, Steve, but to me, that's cruel and unusual. I know people are like, oh, you're a bleeding heart. Well, maybe, but I think that when the state takes away your liberty for whatever reason, whether you're guilty or not, the state has a responsibility to care for your basic needs. And I pay a lot of money, and so do you, into that system. Millions of dollars go into that county jail. They get $26 million a year from taxpayers at least. That was old numbers that I found several years ago. It's probably higher than that now. So with the $26 million of taxpayer money a year, Are you telling me that they can't cut a deal with Walmart to get a very good deal on wool socks and underwear for the people in their jails? Like, I'm sorry, that's absurd. It's absurd. And I don't want to hear that they're being paid, that you have to pay to stay in prison. You're not there by your own choice.
See, this is the thing. Like, are we bleeding hearts? I mean, I think I'm as conservative. I'm as hard right
I'm
as they come.
conservative too, but I think this is bullshit.
But it's immoral. It's immoral. And that's well, the chapter you're referring. What I'm interested to see what is the piece that you want, because I want to talk about this article.
I want to read this. I want to read this chapter that made me just
read the point that
made me want to throw up.
All right.
The cost of incarceration is usually applied to indigent persons. And this is what I was saying on Nick's show the other night. I was right. Turns out I was right. Is usually applied to indigent persons since the vast majority of criminal defendants are represented by the public defender's office. This is what I was saying. This adds to the tremendous burden already inflicted on the convicted felon by the mere fact of felony conviction. In a survey of labor outcomes before and after incarceration, the Brookings Institution found that 2 years prior to the year they entered prison, 56% of individuals have essentially no annual earnings, less than $500. Post-incarceration labor statistics are equally grim, with 80% of former prisoners earning less than $15,000 in the first year after prison, and 49% reporting earning $500 or less. Imposing debt on prisoners with little to no income charts a path back to prison. Financial insecurity and disruptive collection tactics can cause recidivism. Thus, those hoping to deter future crime may find that pay-to-stay fees sometimes have the opposite effect. What are we doing, Steve?
That's really good. I like who wrote that.
What are we doing?
Well,
this is supposed to be a rehabilitation exercise.
Nope, wrong. That's where you get it wrong. Nope, it's punishment
that's what
only.
We're told. That's what we're told.
I know that. Well, okay, there's a lot. You need to read the whole chapter.
I've read a lot of it, but that just stood out to me as
that is coming right out of some appeals that I'm doing right now. Okay, and let me give you the fact patterns in the cases that I'm dealing with. Where in this, see, we get here's the thing. As a public defender.
Oh, wait. I forgot. I want to read the first part of this because people are going to lose their minds when they hear about this story.
All right.
Mr. Smith.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This
was
is
a
Mr. Kelly.
22-year-old offender on felony probation.
Oh, no, this is my current case.
For 4 third-degree felonies and 1 second-degree felony. What were the crimes?
It's a sex offense.
His probation, nobody likes them. His probation, but this is so absurd, was a 10 p.m. curfew, but he was allowed to work. One night, he had to work late. Mr. Smith was attempting to retain his job at the local Denny's, where he was probably making $10 an hour. He was told by the manager that if he left his job at 10 p.m. before cleaning up, he would be fired for job abandonment. He chose to stay and clean up and was discovered by his probation officer at the Denny's at 10:30 p.m. No one was injured or harmed by the violation. There was no loss to the government, no restitution, no damages to anyone at all. For this violation, the Florida court sentenced Mr. Smith to 22 years in prison and imposed $401,000 of cost of incarceration. What? 22 years
and not
in
only
prison
that, but if
for
you
working an
30
extra
minutes
half hour.
late,
Oh my God, stop it. I can't with this.
That's true. No, that's my current case I have. In fact, I'm trying to set that one up. This chapter here is part of a brief that I am going to set up for the U.S. Supreme Court on an excessive fines challenge to the cost of incarceration in Florida. That is absolutely 100% true, that charge. And if you calculate it out, and I do the math in my brief, basically he will serve 22 years in prison. And when he gets out, his cost of incarceration will encompass every dollar that he will ever earn in his entire life.
Golly.
His
my sister
income.
says I would have such a hard time being respectful to that judge. You
Oh,
probably
he's
don't
the
want
worst
to talk
judge.
about. Oh, you do want to talk about it. Go for it.
Judge Howard in Citrus County. Judge
Bad
Howard is
judge.
the worst. He's the worst judge in the whole, probably Florida. Terrible judge.
Do you have to go in front of him again?
No, I'm appeals. I get to criticize him.
Oh, right. You get to go to the higher court.
Yeah. So
Oh,
no.
good for you.
Well, and I don't know him. I've never practiced in front of him.
Yeah.
I just know what I see, because the other case that he did, he imposes his cost of incarceration on everybody that comes in front of him. And like I had the last case that I was setting up for the U.S. Supreme Court appeal to challenge his cost, was a guy, Mr. Kelly. And I think I've talked about the Kelly case. He's given me permission to talk about his case. He goes there, he's walking his child down the middle of the street, and he's drunk. So it's like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. It's a sunny Saturday. It's like 60 degrees. Walking his kid down the middle of the road. It's a 25-mile-per-hour road, goes to the park. And he's taking his kid to the park, but he's drunk. And a cop pulls up behind him and honks his horn. And the guy doesn't hear him. He honks it a second time. He looks around and he pulls his kid off the road, and they go onto the park. For that, he gets charged with felony child neglect, gets 10 years in prison, and $182,000 cost of incarceration.
Jeez.
And I'm not lying.
Is Florida
he ended up
worst?
spending a year plus, like a year and a half in prison before I got him out on appeal.
Wow.
But that was, ridiculous. So you still did a year and a half for that.
Is Florida one of the worst states with the cost of incarceration laws, or is that
There's
that
a
happening
chart in the
everywhere?
book. Look in the book.
Oh, there is? Where? What? I didn't get to. I haven't read the whole thing. Oh, here's the chart. Oh, okay.
I think Kentucky is worse, but Florida is number 2.
Interesting. Yeah. So Cindy's going to be faced with, we didn't know this, but it all happened after her conviction. She got a whole bunch of information that said she was going to have to pay all these fines. All of a sudden, there were these thousands of dollars of fines, you guys, thousands of dollars just out of nowhere. This is a woman who is a cake decorator at a grocery store. Okay. She is not going to end. And they completely, destroyed her ability to pay for anything. She spent all of her money on lawyers for the CPS case, because they don't give you a lawyer in those cases. You have to get your own. So everything that she was able to raise, she paid lawyers for. And now she's going to have to pay the state thousands of dollars in restitution. Plus, she has to buy her own shoes and underwear and sweaters and soap and hygiene stuff in the jail, including coffee. They don't even give them coffee, Steve. I'm sorry, but I think that's an 8th Amendment violation right there. How can you not give people coffee in the morning, even just one cup? I'm sorry. I think that's crazy. I don't expect that my tax dollars are going to be used. What are they being used for? I don't really understand. If they're not being used to feed and house and clothe prisoners, what are they being used for?
Can I ask you a special favor question sort of thing?
Yes.
Because I have this article, the cost of incarceration article you have. Okay, I'm working on this as a public policy document because I think it's a bad public policy. It's immoral. It's illegal. All of those things. And that part of that essay is part of my appellate brief. It's also a public policy brief to give to the legislature to say they need to repeal that cost of incarceration. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, I want the piece that is missing on that article that I would like is somebody that could collaborate with me on that to add a moral, ethical, Christian perspective, because that's something that I'm not really that brilliant as far as a moralist, I have my opinions and I have my beliefs, but somebody who really knows Aquinas and, Christian doctrine and a Christian view and a moral, ethical analysis of imposing a cost of incarceration on defendants of this kind of magnitude. So there's actually 2 pieces that are missing from that article.
It's totally immoral. Totally immoral. If we're going to, and it doesn't matter what the offense was either. If we are going to claim that our prison system or our justice system is some kind of rehabilitation system, which is what they say, there is no way that this is appropriate.
Well, I also
these people can't pay it. What I was trying to say on Ricardo's was, and he was just joking about wanting to own a for-profit prison, but I know that he's not being serious.
Yeah.
what the point is that none of the people going into prison in the first place, almost none of them come from money. They do not have money. They come from poverty. So inflicting these financial punishments on top of losing their liberty, it is absolutely the definition of cruel and unusual, because they can never repay it. They can't pay it. My sister suggests that we ask my brother-in-law to collaborate with you on that, because he is an Aquinas scholar, and
Okay, excellent. I would love. Well, shoot him.
I don't know if he has the time, but he surely would be a good person to ask about it, because he's very good at that.
I've reached out to a few scholars on, but they're busy, but I would love it, because there's actually 2 pieces of that article that I would like. I put it in there as a late edition because I thought it was really important, and it needs to be in there. And a lot of the work, I mean, it reads like it's complete, but I know what's missing from it. And what's missing from it is, number one, a public policy review, which my friend, Dr. Kenneth Reynolds from UCF, who's a brilliant scholar, and Texas A&M, he's going to be doing that portion. And then the other portion is the moral Christian view, which I think we need to have every argument aligned to attack this ridiculous fee.
Steve, I'm looking at the chart right now.
Yes.
Is this just for felonies?
That's a good question. Well, it's actually transmitting down to jails. We have a I forget which, in our jurisdiction within the 7th Circuit, there is a jail that passed that says you will be charged for being in jail. So when you get arrested for a crime, you're charged for the jail stay, even if you're found later not guilty.
Oh my God. Listen to this. Colorado. Look at Colorado. I did not know this. So that I'm learning all of this through Cindy's case, through walking with her through this, requiring such person to pay the full cost of care incurred during such a person's sentence. So the full cost, she will be responsible for the full cost. So not just the items that she needs in jail, but whatever the cost. So what is the $26 million a year going to the county jail for?
Well, see, okay, I'll push back. Let me give you the one argument for such fees. All right. And there is a logical basis for it. And that is that if you have a Ted Bundy who has some spectacular murder and he sells his book rights for $2 million, you don't want the criminal making money off of their book deal, right?
So you have a law that they can't make, a convicted murderer can't make money on books. Fine.
Well, and the other thing,
you don't charge them for every day they stay in prison.
But here's the thing. The pushback to that is that it should be an assertion, a positive assertion by the state, not an automatic fee. And one of the reasons that the state of Florida's fee is infirmed is because it does not require any kind of individual circumstance determination. It's a blanket fee that's $50 a day, no matter who you are, what you are, nothing. There's no individual determination, which I think is required under the excessive fines clause, which it kind of talks about that in the constitutional arguments, I think, are up front. But it's a big problem because this cost, it's a good sell. Who's the constituency against these fees? Oh, charge it on the criminals. They should pay their own way. Well, criminal justice system does not pay its own way. It's a function of protection of all of us as a public service. That's what government's for.
We are paying for it. There should be no extra stuff. I mean, fine, if you want to charge them to get books or whatever that aren't available, if it's like extra, like, they want to get an iPad or whatever for the rental. That makes sense. Fine. But socks and underwear and shampoo? Are you kidding me? Come on.
One of the things that inspires me, all these articles come from some little minor annoyance, because what'll happen is something will come up and I'm like, something's wrong with this. It's like something in the back of my head and I have to think about it. I'm like, why does this bother me? And I start digging. I mean, almost all these articles, that's how I write. And this one came like this thing. It's like, there's got to be something wrong with this. And I kept on thinking about the Chinese bullet fee, where they shoot the political prisoner and then they bring the wife the bill for the bullet.
Oh, yeah, it is like that. It is.
Yeah, and it's like, are we this?
It's totally immoral.
It's like immoral,
totally
right?
Immoral. Carla Vega says, why wasn't Black Lives Matter whining about this? That's a very good question, Carla. And that's because Black Lives Matter was never really interested in fixing any kind of problems. They were simply there to roil up and cause riots and burn stuff down. Like they weren't actually interested in fixing things.
They're grifting, they're dividing the society, grifting off that division and supporting Democrats with their chaos.
Yes.
They
Well,
don't give a
who
about.
started? You know who started actually doing something about prison reform was Donald J. Trump, who actually
Oh
put in
yeah,
prison reform for the first time since, I don't know, was it 50 years or a long time? And
yeah.
because of Donald Trump's prison reform, many people, I think 3,500 people were let out of prison, and they had been there for many, many years for nonviolent crimes. And it's still happening. It's still happening, though.
Well, I have some of my public defender's office. We do have a left wing group in our office, somewhat, and I said, like, I think that DeSantis and the Republican legislature might be amenable to some of this cost of incarceration prison reform. My particular, we have Webster Barnaby, who's he's a Black Republican who represents our area. He just won re-election. And I think that he's interested in fixing some of these cost issues in Florida. So once I get this article complete, I'm going to try to send it to some of the legislators to try to get them to repeal this thing, because it's against public policy. It's wrong. It's immoral. It's
Well, I think
stupid.
you're right to want the Christian perspective on it, because I think that might be the thing that could convince some of the Republicans to support repealing that. Because for God's sake, we cannot be. I'm not one of these people who thinks that. I was actually for bail reform in New York before I figured out that they were actually going to let violent criminals out. They lied. They said they weren't going to do that, but they lied. I believed them, and that was a mistake, because clearly Democrats lie all the time. But if they were going to do what they said they would do, which is reform bail so that nonviolent criminals did not lose their jobs, did not lose their kids, did not lose their homes while they were waiting for their trial, I was all in favor of that, because I don't think you should be held for nonviolent crimes on a bail system, especially when most of the people picked up for this stuff are indigent. And a lot of them lose their kids because of it. But of course, New York went overboard, and they put violent criminals in the nonviolent category, and then said, "Oh, well, we can't fix it. It's in the code. Oh, sorry." So now rapists are running around. That wasn't what it was intended for. But there is absolutely, we've had absolutely have these ways that we can reform some of the stuff. And one of them has to be this cost of incarceration in these private prisons. Now, the private prisons really get to me, Steve, because
No, I agree with you.
where's the money going? I want to know where the money is going from the taxpayers, because are they double dipping? They're double dipping. They're taking the money from us. God knows where it's going and what they're using it for. And then they're also taking the money from the prisoners, and they're giving it to these private companies.
Yeah, see, I don't want to have it to be profitable for the state to incarcerate its citizens.
No, because if you give them an incentive, they will do more of it. We've seen that with child welfare. The federal government incentivizes the states to take more kids. They give them more money depending on how many kids they take, and the states make sure they take more kids. Period.
Well, can I talk? Because I'm sure your audience is quite conservative, and I think so, extremely conservative. But we also say, well, you're a bleeding heart. I'm a Christian Catholic convert. And but I want to talk just kind of generally, because a lot of people are like Fox News people, and my mom is like really Fox News person. And the thing is, what you're talking about is you can go too far left and let all the criminals free, and nobody should be prisoned, and let everybody go, and let's all sing Kumbaya, and let's smoke our weed and everybody's happy, right? That's too far left, right? But you can also go too far the other way, which is like, everybody gets the death penalty. Take those homeless people and get them off my street and lock them all up. I mean, that's my mom. Don't tell her, don't let her watch this.
No, it's true,
she's like, sweet.
That's my dad. My dad's like, screw them. Who cares? They're in prison. It's their own fault.
So you can go too far the other way. It's like my guy who's walking his kid down the street drunk, and he gets 10 years in prison. That's too far the other way. Right. So it's like somewhere there's a balance here. And I think it has to be individualized. And it all ultimately comes down to a reasonable and respectful populace that has faith, that is reasonable. Because the problem is, when we get polarized and we see individual cases through the lens of this political division, it gets transmitted down to individuals and creates injustice. It's like, well, I think, because I have this political thing, because the media likes to highlight these sensational cases that, like, oh, this murderer got out up in Chicago and killed 20 kids, right? Oh, so that's spread throughout the world. But in Florida, that's not the case. We got the opposite problem. So there's a middle ground here, and that is, individual moral decisions based on reasonable prosecutors and reasonable juries and reasonable judges. But we're losing that because of our culture poison that's being injected through the educational system and through the mass media.
So tell me about, you also said there was another chapter that related, you thought, to the Abcug case, and it was started on page 17, the burden of proof and a prescription drug affirmative defense case. I got to read some of this, but I didn't get through the chapter. So I just wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit. This story is kind of nuts too, because
Well, these are real cases, by the way, and I think I might even footnote the case that I used.
This is good. I'll read you a brief summary so that the audience can catch up, and then you can talk to us about it. Florida's prove yourself innocent absurdity. The unresolved burden of proof question in Florida's prescription drug affirmative defense and why it matters. A brief story. Mrs. Smith is bedridden and requires care by her loving husband of 20 years, Mr. Smith, who cares for her. The costs of the medical bills have all but bankrupted them, but they own their modest mobile home and the land that it sits on, and their homestead is protected from creditors in Florida. He occasionally drinks, and this has gotten him in trouble in the past. He cooks for her, bathes for her, and runs errands for her. Well, I wonder why he drinks. Today, although he has been drinking, he drives to the store to pick up his wife's prescription of oxycodone. After buying the medicines, he takes the pill bottle and puts it in his pocket as he runs other errands. While on the way home from his last errand at Lowe's, he tries to beat a yellow light, but is stopped by a police officer. This was his first mistake, by the way. The officer leans over next to his window and asks, "Do you have anything on you I should know about?" Mr. Smith pulls the pill bottle out of his pocket and says, "Well, these are my wife's pills." Shouldn't he have just said, "Do you have a warrant?"
I just report the facts, ma'am.
Mr. Smith is charged with trafficking in oxycodone, a second-degree felony with a minimum mandatory prison sentence of 3 years in prison. He's also charged with DUI. He cannot afford the bail, so he sits in jail. At arraignment, the assistant state attorney offers to allow him to plead to the reduced charge of possession of oxycodone, a third-degree felony, and be placed on probation for 2 years. But Mr. Smith decries that he is helping his wife and that he is only guilty of the DUI. His defense attorney advises him that there is something called an affirmative defense and that he was acting as an agent for the lawful prescription holder. Mr. Smith decides to reject the offer and asks for a jury trial, and then sits in jail for 10 months waiting for that trial. When the trial date finally arrives, the assistant state attorney shows the jury that Mr. Smith was in possession of trafficking amounts of oxycodone, including the statements of Mr. Smith telling the officer that this was his wife's prescription. They also show his roadside sobriety exercises, which he fails. The defense attorney moves for a judgment of acquittal on the possession charge, since the state has not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Smith did not possess the drugs lawfully. The assistant state attorney argues that he has met all the elements and that the burden is on the defense to prove that Mr. Smith possessed the drugs lawfully. The trial court denies the motion. Oh my God. The defense puts on Mr. Smith, who tells his side of the story. His wife also testifies from her wheelchair, sobbing, that she needs him to take care of her, and that life has been very hard for the last 10 months while he was incarcerated, as her friends and family have not been able to give her the attention that her husband is able to. There is no state rebuttal to this testimony. What happened to him, Steve?
Jury convicted. He did 3 years in prison.
Oh my God.
And I had that was
for
like,
illegal prescription. How
Yes.
is the defense not able to prove that prescription was legal?
oh, they
Don't
did.
you just
They
need to get the doctor's order?
we had the prescription. The prescription was put into evidence by the defense.
It didn't
So-
matter.
Well, because the burden of proof was on the defense to prove that the prescription was legal. Because the burden of proof was on the defense, the jury was at liberty to disbelieve the defendant.
Oh no! Even seeing the prescription.
Yes, they had the prescription, they had
See,
the
this
wife,
is why I tell
they had
you,
the
juries-
defendant,
Oh my God, juries are so dumb.
they had the bottle with her
Mm.
name on the label.
I used to
And-
think that I would rather be in front of a jury than a
No,
judge, and now I think, no way, man, no
No,
way.
no, you
because
do
it-
want to be in front of a jury.
Oh, I don't know.
But
I
in
don't
this
know about
case,
that.
but in this case, this is a true story, and I represented this guy on appeal. I orally argued this case before the 5th DCA. They affirmed it without a decision. I remember the questioning of the when I was questioning the judge at appeals and on an oral argument, and he's asking me, he says, "You mean that I could have my wife's prescription going, they could get arrested and I could go away?" Yes. I thought they were going to write on this. I couldn't believe it. And then, of course, what happened after that appeal, I kind of forgot about it. I did the appeal, and it bothered me, but I have a lot of cases that bother me. And then because this damn jury instruction in Florida is screwy. I don't know if you've read this, but it allows for the state to have this thing that the defendant has to prove themselves innocent.
Wait, is it right here? The statute, section 893.13 of Florida statute states, it is unlawful for any person to be in actual or constructive possession of a controlled substance unless such controlled substance was lawfully obtained from a practitioner or pursuant to a valid prescription or order of practice. But he had that.
I know that, but if the state doesn't have, if the state does, this is what it talks about, because there's like, who bears the burden of proof on the prescription drug defense? If the burden of proof is on the defense, then the jury can disbelieve it.
So Stephanie is saying that's unconstitutional. Since when does the defendant have to prove his innocence?
I agree. Let's read the book.
When did this start? Why have they done this?
Well, I will tell you, because see, and this is the problem with being pro-state. Prosecutors are not good. Okay,
no.
This is the thing. It's not like
I'm with you.
No, but it's like, we have this thing. All these defense attorneys are for criminals, and we don't want them on the jury instruction committee. I tried to get on the Florida jury instruction committee. In fact, did you read the? You want to see some dirt? Read the letter from the jury instruction people, because I sent this to the jury instruction committee, and they we're not interested, because it's all a bunch of prosecutors and they want to make it easy to convict people.
This is the letter. There's a letter from the jury panel.
I sent a letter. I sent the article to the jury instruction committee in Florida.
Oh, where is it?
It's at the end of the chapter. It's like a minor footnote at the end of that. I don't let grass grow under my feet.
Let's see.
Let me see here.
Is it page?
Hold on, I'm almost out of these books. I've only got a couple left. I'm actually reordering. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But
this is a terrible story.
I know, it's painful.
No, it's really terrible. I mean, it's just
look at page 28.
Okay. Oh,
I'm
here
going
it
to get in
is.
so much trouble.
Why?
Because I tell the truth like you.
Okay, so it says, a quick addendum. I forwarded this article to the Florida Bar and the Supreme Court Committee on Standard Jury Instructions in Criminal Cases. The following is the verbatim exchange that took place, presented without comment. To the Supreme Court Committee on Standard Jury Instructions in Criminal Cases from Stephen N. Gosney. On June 27, 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States decided Zilu Ruan versus the U.S. Ruan stands for the proposition that once defendant meets his burden of production in supporting a good faith affirmative defense, the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knowingly or unintentionally acted in an unauthorized manner. That's always been my understanding of it.
You would think.
This case has direct applicability to Florida's prescription drug affirmative defense. Florida's standard jury instruction needs to be revised to make it clear how the burden of proof is handled. See attached article, which I write specifically for you. Gosney, Stephen, Florida's Prove Yourself Innocent Absurdity. Sincerely, Steve Gosney. Response from the Florida Bar. Steve, thanks for the article and heads up about the case. I can put both before the committee, but before I do, I ask you to consider that the the Supreme Court case was determined based on the language of a federal statute. It is not decided on constitutional grounds. Therefore, that case is not binding upon Florida state court judges, especially given that the relevant state statute does not contain the same language as the federal statute. As you know, the committee cannot determine the law. The committee's instructions can only reflect the law. Thus, for a standard instruction to allocate the burden of persuasion on an affirmative defense, the committee would need either a statute or a binding appellate opinion. There is no statute that deals specifically with the affirmative prescription defense. Well, what about what's in the Constitution about being innocent unless proven guilty? How about that one?
And notice that this is a staffer. So which way is the staffer leading?
Yeah, telling you that nothing will change, not without an appellate decision. The most relevant statute that addresses the specific issue works against you, and there is no binding case law interpreting the prescription defense. Bottom line, I will put your materials on the committee agenda if you want. But are you positive you want that? Holy shit!
Right. So what's my Yeah,
Oh,
like
man.
bureaucrat working against me. I get it.
Like what is he saying? What is that, like a veiled threat? Are you
Well, go
positive
ahead.
you want that?
So what's the response from Gosney here?
Bart, I would suggest that the Dixon citation is singularly unhelpful in determining which standard instruction should be used when determining who bears the burden of proof. Ruan, while a federal case, states the correct application of the burden of proof in the context of prescriptions, albeit in the context of the federal statute. Section 885 can thus be understood as providing a presumptive device akin to others we've recognized in the criminal context, which merely shifts the burden of production to the defendant, following the satisfaction of which the ultimate burden of persuasion returns to the prosecution. Note, too, that Dixon, the case the committee cites to for guidance, is also a federal SCOTUS case. I would think that, as the article suggests, Wright v. State is a much better standard for determining who bears the burden. Thus, my recommendation would be for the committee to add Wright as the guiding case to determine which instruction to use. The existing state of the instruction leaves confusion on the issue and subjects the citizens of Florida to wrongful conviction and incarceration. In their final response, Steve, no one on committee thought that new SCOTUS opinion supported committee changing 3.6. What? So because they don't think, they looked at it and they decided, well, we don't think it is instructive for us in this case. Really?
Yes. It's ridiculous. This is the thing. The thing is that
Das Ogre, are you positive you want to live in a free country? Yeah, that is what it sounded like.
What the jury instruction on this, and I will tell you, it's really unusual, and I couldn't believe it when I dealt with that original case, which was like 2012. And then when I went back to it, I'm like, you mean that stupid thing still exists? The way the jury instruction reads is, if the burden of proof is on the defense, here's an instruction. If the burden of proof is on the state, here's the instruction. Here's this stupid federal case that's singularly unhelpful in determining that. So it's basically up to the judge to decide which instruction to give. So the whole article is talking about, well, here, the way it should work is that the defense bears a burden of production. So once they pass, so if I provide the prescription, right, then the state should have to rebut that beyond a reasonable doubt. Now the burden shifts to the state. Once I've provided an initial threshold of burden, I should be able to give specific details about doctor, prescription number, or whatever, right? If I do that, then the state has to disprove my affirmative defense beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden should shift to them. That's the way it should work. But the way it is now, you've got these two instructions. So you get a pro state judge and they just say, oh, the burden's on the state defense to prove yourself innocent. And that's okay.
Well, okay. So again, I feel like this is a widespread problem, Steve.
Because see, it's loaded up. The committee's loaded with a bunch of prosecutors who are pro state, and they don't want to hear from the defense because they want to make it easy to convict people. And
yeah, absolutely. What they did in the Abcug case with the jury instructions, that's when I knew it was lost. When they did the jury instructions, I started weeping and I left the courtroom. And in fact, one of the guys I was with, I got in the car and I was just sobbing. And he was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so negative? And I said, it's over. It's over. I'm telling you right now, it's over. Because during jury instructions, the judge allowed for the and this was something that was sprung on the defense right then during jury instructions. The prosecution had already told the defense he was going to use Cindy's purchase of a gun, which she had purchased because her house got broken into. And it even says on the receipt, home break-in, which is why she bought it. The prosecution already told the defense that he was using the purchase of the gun as the overt act for the conspiracy to kidnap. Okay. He did not tell the defense that he was planning on using. They claimed that she made a plan to kidnap her son from foster care with some QAnon unnamed conspirators. There were unnamed co-conspirators, right?
There's a lot of complication here. See, and that's
they claimed this. They claimed that the gun, you need an overt act to prove a conspiracy, okay? And the prosecution said it was going to be the gun. That was what he was arguing. Right. And of course, the defense was like, she has a Second Amendment right to own a gun. She's not a felon. She bought it legally. There's no evidence that she intended to use a gun. The prosecution's star witness said, I didn't think she bought the gun for any raid. His star witness said she bought it because our house got broken into. So the whole time we're thinking he'll never get that. He'll never get the gun because there's no evidence that she bought a gun for anything other than self-defense. During jury instructions, he tells the judge he's going to also use the presence of Ryan Wilson as the overt act. He's going to let the jury decide which one they think it is. Either the gun or this person who came to her house for protection that the con men sent to her house. This was the first time we had heard this argument from the prosecution during jury instructions. So he basically brought it up during closing arguments, never introduced any evidence that the arrival of this person was to facilitate any kind of raid. There were emails between them. There were text messages between them. Prosecution didn't use any of it. You know why? Because it would have proven that none of this was happening. I mean, so he allowed, and the judge allowed the jury to choose between the gun or Ryan Wilson coming to her house.
Well, it seems to be that would be a factual finding, be subject to, there's so much here, but it was a factual finding under Apprendi that the jury is the fact finder, and therefore you're allowing for a non-unanimous verdict on two different alternative theories. So the defense attorney should have asked for specific jury interrogatory about which theory they're doing and get beyond a reasonable doubt on each particular one. That's a case called Apprendi. But there's so much on this case. There's so much difficulty.
The medical child abuse too, the misdemeanor medical child abuse, they actually, because there was no injury to the child, right? There's no pictures of this child abused. There's no abuse. There's no reports of abuse. What they used as the abuse were literally the tests that the doctors ordered over 7 years, including a couple of blood punctures, like blood tests, an x-ray, a lumbar puncture, which his mother was on the record saying, I don't want. And I don't know why we have to do this. I don't think he should have that. And that's it. That was the medical abuse.
Right. So you basically have medical abuse because you followed your doctor's instructions.
Yes.
That's what I heard when I read I inserted a little bit.
There's no evidence that she didn't
She's following her
doctor's instructions.
And this is the thing, like I have a few friends that have special needs children, and they require a lot of effort. And, it's a hard call. It's hard being a parent of a special needs child. It requires a lot of time and attention, and you're making a lot of difficult calls all the time to deal with. Sometimes they can really get out of control. And it's easy to second guess into the state parent system. Oh, I feel it's like this moral superiority. We're so great. We're the great parents, and you're a bad parent. And I'm going to condemn you. And I get off on my moral superiority. It's this whole... to me, it's a left-wing kind of thing, is that we're better than you and we're going to judge you and take your children away because the state is no substitute for a parent. And
this case is so complex because when they did take her son away and the system was so malicious and worked against her so hard and made it very clear they never wanted to give her son back. They never were going to give her a fair shot to get him back. They made that very clear.
It's evil.
They drove her to the point of such trauma that she was ripe for the pickings by these con men who then did this to 5 other women, by the way. 5 other women. One was talked into kidnapping her own children and taking them across state lines, and then she was arrested for kidnapping.
But this group, what was the motive of the group?
They were raising money on it.
Oh, okay.
They were grifting. They were grifting on it, and they would do these, GoFundMe's or whatever. Speaking of
if you want the book, go to
CrimeLaw. Yes, go to CrimeLaw.net. This is a great book, and it's really interesting. There's some really stories in here that will make you really angry.
Well, I don't want to make you angry. One thing I try to do in everything I write is propose a solution, because it's easy enough to criticize, and that's, it's easy to throw stones, but I always try to add in my articles, I try to put, here's where I think it should go, or here's the solution to this problem. It's not enough just to say, okay, yeah, it's a difficult story, but where should we take it? And ultimately, I've done a lot of thinking on this, is ultimately we have a crisis of faith in the country. And a lot of these problems come down to people placing their faith in false gods, idolatry, and placing it in, for example, they place it in rational thought, or they put it in the legal system, or they put it in government, rather than God where it should be, and letting our ethics and morality create reasonable people. But we get people that are deluded into these false gods. That's a longer story. I did want to say that the book You can get it crimelaw.net. I've got a second edition. This, you can't get the first edition that you've got anymore. That's out of print. I've got a second edition coming out next Monday. I should be getting it. So any book that you'll get will be the second edition. The second edition has upgraded cover, upgraded paper inside, and I added an additional chapter, which goes to prosecutorial misconduct and closing arguments.
Ooh, I would like to read that. I'll tell you
So
what.
I'm going to do, anybody that bought the book, I'm going to send them the article. You can actually look it up. It's actually on SSRN, which is an academic aggregation site. Are you familiar with SSRN?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you can get that chapter on SSRN, but I'm going to send everybody that bought the original book that chapter. See, if I was a grifter, I'd say, buy the book, buy the second edition to get the new chapter, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what's this?
Well,
but I'm going to send it out because I want people to read it.
I want to show you some of this sentencing hearing. This is Judge Patricia Herron, who's Cindy's sentencing judge. She's the judge that presided over the trial. Wait, where are my notes? I have notes here somewhere. Hold on.
But somebody brings about trans kids, they don't get their kids taken away. So I can chop off their limbs and appendages and inject them with all kinds of life-altering drugs. And that's not child abuse?
Oh, right. I know.
But you've got a special needs kid that's got a prescription.
Or let's say that Cindy's doctors were wrong. Okay, let's say they were wrong. Why is that her fault? She listened to the doctors.
And you're desperate. You are desperate.
They actually accepted, the prosecution accepted that this child as a baby had seizures. They accepted that. So now we know, so it's not disputed that he had seizures as a baby, started at 7 months old. Imagine the kind of stress and trauma that you would have as a mother, a single mom, with a baby who's having seizures. They claimed, though, that she just kept reporting seizures that he wasn't having. How do they know? We heard from a doctor, her own pediatrician on the stand, who said, well, I wouldn't expect to see seizures in a patient that has a seizure disorder because it doesn't always happen when they're in the office. This was their evidence that he wasn't having seizures. Well, no one else saw them. Why didn't you videotape them? Well, I don't know. When your kid's having a grand mal seizure, are you running for the video camera or are you holding him? Like what? It's just ridiculous to me. It is ridiculous to me. And if these doctors gave him medicine that made the seizures worse or made his symptoms worse, they're the ones who should pay the price. They're the ones who are responsible, not the mom who's just trying to do what they tell her to do. It's absurd.
It's arrogance and it's moral superiority. And people get in these positions of power that don't have, a lot of them aren't parents. Some of them are bitter people who are, who get off on moral superiority by condemning parents. I don't know. It's a dangerous thing that we have created a criminal justice prosecution machine that can crank out and crank through people. Look at what's happened to the January 6th people.
Oh God, I know.
It's like
they just decided. Listen, the worst part about this, and if I can find it, I'll play it. I don't know where my notes went for the minute marks, but the worst part about this is the judge brings up that Cindy believed her son was being trafficked for money through the child welfare system, and that she said that special needs children have more money attached to them. And the judge goes, based on what? Oh, ma'am, I can prove that. It's in the federal papers. It's in the federal law that gives the money to the states. They get more money for disabled kids. It's not disputed. And these people, the defense attorney let the prosecution tell the jury that our foster care system is beyond reproach and that it has nothing to do with sex trafficking. And that that we don't have a sex trafficking problem in foster care, which is absolutely a lie. We do, and the State Department admits it. Said 60%.
But see, the government is the only one that is not subject to criticism. Like as a Catholic, people love to say, well, what about the priests and all that? But public school teachers are much more likely to molest your kids, right?
Oh yeah, 50 times.
But we don't talk about that because it's not an organization that we can attack because it's the wonderful government that has all of our interests at heart, right? When in fact, so why is it that the public school teachers are not that there's a lot of great public? I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that it's like once it becomes governmentalized, everything's pure and holy. You're worshiping the state.
Yeah, that's what she was convicted for. I'm telling you, That is why the state went after her the way they did, like a rabid dog.
They hate
because
it. They
because
hate
she
people
was
who are-
on, she
yes.
was bringing attention to Colorado's child welfare system, which is rife with corruption. She was bringing attention to the fact that the child welfare people are they fabricate evidence and they withhold court dates and they do all sorts of bad things, and they didn't like it. They did not like her being out there being vocal about it, and they decided to shut her up by any means. I'm going to play a little bit of this for you because I would like to hear from a defense attorney's point of view.
Well, these are so out of context. This is hard, but I'll
I
give,
know, but
I mean, like,
just
and there's a lot of complications in this case. This is one that really requires a lot of time and effort to get into, but I'll
it's
do
true.
my
And
best.
I don't require you to think she's innocent, but I just want you to hear how the judge behaved at
Okay,
this
let's
at
hear
this
it.
sentencing.
Play the distress.
Are you helping some people? Yes. You went around the system
Okay, here we go.
voluntarily, willingly to care for him until you could get him back. And rather than going,
Oh wait, it's before this.
not just your son, but at least two of the
Okay.
cases, and I don't want to see it anymore. I don't know what to do with that, to get through to you the things that you're not focusing on that are tremendously important in this case. The harm that you caused not just your son, but at least two of your other children. The harm that you caused the foster family who was only doing what they felt appropriate under the circumstances. They didn't know you. They didn't know you from Adam. They took your son in.
She did nothing to the foster family, by the way. So what she is suggested, what she's saying is she's blaming Cindy for the harm that the police did to the foster family because they took the word of a 15-year-old and then scared the shit out of the foster family, moved them to a hotel for weeks. Cindy didn't do anything to the foster family. She didn't even know where they lived. So the idea that she did something to the foster family or her other two children, by the way, who told me one story back in 2019 and then got on the stand and changed their story completely. Ridiculous. She didn't do anything to them either.
Voluntarily, willingly to care for him until you could get him back. And rather than going through the steps to lawfully make that happen, you went around the system and here you are. I don't know what to do to get through to you. Are you helping some people? Yes, I suppose you are. But sometimes it's much, much easier to focus your attention on others rather than taking a good, deep, hard look at yourself. Pretty much easy to go and spend that time supporting and lifting up others.
She had just heard, by the way, several women come and testify to her that Cindy was their AA sponsor for several years and that she is responsible for their sobriety. And this judge turns around and says, are you helping some people? I guess, but it's much easier to help others than to look at yourself. Have you ever heard of a judge say that it's better rehabilitation to take a look in the mirror instead of help others and do community service, Steve?
Yeah, the answer is so commonly often that it makes me sick. Well, remember the case I told you about the guy that was walking his kid drunk to the park?
Yeah.
Let me read you exact quote what the judge says to this guy at sentencing where he maxes him out to 10 years in prison. Here's what he said.
God.
He says, the mother comes to the court and pleads with the judge to bring daddy home because daddy has bonded with his stepchild and he misses him and he really wants him at home, right? The judge, in the face of mom wanting him home, says, I cannot fathom a more dangerous situation for a 4-year-old than to be with a highly intoxicated caregiver. Really?
Really?
This is the worst thing that you've ever seen?
And actually, that's not statistically accurate.
I know.
Actually.
It's so off.
Our statistics from Health and Human Services say children are actually safer with intoxicated parents through drugs or alcohol than they are in foster care. That's the thing.
That's
actually false. It's like not even good information.
But even like just to think that this is the worst thing you've ever seen, and it's not even a crime. The appellate court reversed and said it wasn't even a crime.
And
this is the
to be
worst
drunk
thing
with a 4-year-old is not a crime. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is insane. This woman, I wish I had my timestamps because the stuff that she says about her being a danger to society
Yeah.
because she sees herself as a victim. Steve, a higher court judge declared her a victim of government overreach. A higher court judge said she was held in jail 5.5 months on excessive bail. They set it at $250,000. And the higher court judge said not only did they set it excessively, but they appear to have wanted to keep her in jail no matter what. And that's not allowed. And he even said people have a right to believe any conspiracy they want, and that doesn't make them criminals. It doesn't make them, it doesn't, this was not taken into consideration by this judge, by the way, that she did 5.5 months in jail unconstitutionally during COVID. She had to sentence her to another 60 days. And the 60 days, here's the other thing she did, Steve. She made the conditions of bail so that she will absolutely fail. And I have an email from her attorney that says she's trying to make sure you fail so she can send you to prison.
Well, that's actually a lot of the game in prosecution is to get somebody to plead to probation on major felonies, so that when they screw up and they know they'll screw up, they nail them on the back end, because it's a lot easier to. So if you got a weak case, if you're a prosecutor, you got a weak case. Say, I'll say, well, you plead to the felony, I'll give you probation, right? When you know that the person is weak, drug addict, mentally ill, has problems, homeless, whatever, because then they got a violation of probation. It's a 50% plus one.
Yeah.
And it can be proven by hearsay. Boom, you're going to nail them.
That's what she's doing. She sentenced Cindy to her terms of probation. So she got 60 days in the county jail and 24 months of probation with a 3-year suspended DOC sentence for the felony. The 24 months of probation, her requirements are to keep full-time employment. But of course, the 60 days in jail will make her lose her job. She's not going to have that job when she comes out. To keep her housing, she's going to lose her apartment too, because she can't pay her rent. And to stay in school. She only has 1 month of school left, but she'll be in jail and she can't go. So she's going to get kicked out of school, Steve.
Well, I'll give you another story. This one's not in the book. It's a special Beacon of Fox story. And people, we represent sex offenders, all right? And so sex offenders are the worst people. I hate sex offenders. I don't want molesters out there. Okay, fair enough. We're all on the same page, right? I had a guy who committed a very serious sex offense when he was very young. All right. So he's like in his 20s, and he perps on a young girl who's underage, 13, 12, whatever. He gets wait a second. Let me get this right. He gets a sentence of 22 years in prison, followed by 45 years of probation, sex offender probation.
Whoa.
All right. Fair enough. All right.
45 years. Wow.
Of probation to follow. So
yeah.
22 years in prison, followed by 45 years. I think so. I think that's the correct number. All right. So the guy so what happened? He goes to prison. This is way back like in 90s. Guy goes to prison for his time. He gets out after 9. Now, Florida has since revised its laws, so you have to do 85% of your sentence. But at the time that he was there, he had a 22-year sentence, but he did 9. And the remaining 13 years was converted to probation. All right. That's the way that worked back then. All right. So gets out, never reoffends. So he does the next 13 years of probation, the next no problems, no violations. And that sex offenders, you got to register, you got to put your paperwork, you got to get your driver's license, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's very hard. It's designed to make them fail. But he does everything. He hits a business. He is a contractor. He makes money. He gets married. He's supporting his family. He becomes a Christian. He helps people out. Like he helped people in the jails who are in similar situations to succeed post sex offender world, right? He does 15 more years of probation successfully, no violations. Another 15 years. Jeez. Now the guy is 68 years old. All right, 68 years old. He's starting to lose a little bit of mental acuity. He's done 40 plus years of successful probation. He's on the last 15-year probation sentence. He gets involved. There's like a party, a retirement party. There's a move. There's all this stuff going on. A lot of things going on in his life. And he goes to every month he has to go down to the probation office and sign a little thing, right? Well, this 1 month, he shows it to the probation officer, but forgets He doesn't get it signed. And he sees it 3 days later. He sees it in the bottom of his truck, and he's like, oh, I forgot to get it signed. He goes back to the probation office and says, oh, I forgot to get this signed. They arrest him for violation of probation for not properly registering. He gets, okay, so here's the kicker, right? He ends up pleading. He's in jail for a year plus on this violation. Eventually, they work out a deal where he will get 22 years credit with 20 years time served. So he gets 2 years with the credit for the 20 he already did, right?
Whoa.
So it's 2 years, but he agrees to that. He gets to prison and they say, oh, well, you got released after 9 years, so you don't get credit. So you don't get credit for another 11 years. So his sentence wasn't 2 years. His sentence was 13 years.
Oh, no. Oh,
he moves to withdraw. It gets worse.
These probation, requirements are, I think, sometimes overly harsh. How on earth, if a guy has not reoffended the crime, how can you put a guy in prison for 13 years for not getting a document signed? That's insane.
He moves to withdraw his plea because it wasn't the expectation.
Oh, no.
The judge sees it, denies it, says sorry. So that's when I got it on appeal.
You did? Did you win?
I did win.
Oh, God.
I was able to fix it on appeal. He got 2 years for that violation. Now,
that seems excessive to me. What for not getting a thing signed? It's not like he hurt someone. If he hurt someone, lock him up forever. But he didn't get his paper signed.
And he had 40 years of no violations.
What is the point? What is the point of this? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we really making anything better? Or are we just putting more people in prison? And why? What does the state get out of it?
Well, and this is what I'm saying is that you have to judge things on the facts of the case. And in this type of factual situation, there's got to be some compassion. And this is the thing. It's like we can say, oh, well, he's a bad guy. He's a sex offender, but he did his time. He's done. I mean, what more can you do, right? And this is it seems to me there needs to be reasonable people in the system. But when you have people that's like their job is to nail people and get the maximum sentence, and that's the way they perceive their job, rather than making decisions, because sometimes the decisions you make will be wrong. Sometimes somebody will reoffend, right? On the other hand, sometimes you will put somebody away forever, and that's the wrong decision too. I have another case. This is another painful case. I like to tell stories, but you got a conservative crowd, so I'm going to tell them my best stories on the ridiculous side. Woman, 48-year-old woman, went to Walmart, stole a can of spray paint, got 19 years in prison.
Oh, was that in Florida?
Yeah. Wow. And I appealed it. She's still in there. I appealed it. It was rubber stamped. Now, let me give you the background on that.
On what basis?
Okay. She was from Oklahoma. When she was 18 years old, she did a string of armed robberies. Okay. She did 10 years in prison on a string of armed robberies in Oklahoma when she was 18. So she was from 18 to 28. She was in prison. She gets out of prison. She wanders the world, right? She commits a petty theft of some sort, a felony petty theft of some sort within the prior 10 years. Okay. So she commits a petty theft in Walmart, stealing the can of spray paint. She was actually stealing food in the earlier one, but she steals this can of spray paint at the behest of her baby mama or boyfriend, husband, whatever he is. She gets caught because it's a misdemeanor, because it's a retail theft and she has a prior petty theft. That makes it a felony petty theft. Because it's a felony petty theft and she has one prior felony in the last 10 years, the prior record comes in to hit her on the score sheet. So the minimum mandatory for her was 19 years in prison.
Wow. Shawnette has a good point here. Shawnette says, once you're in the system, they will find ways to keep you in the system. And that is how it feels. That is how it feels. And I wonder often, like, what are we doing? Why are we just locking people up to lock them up? Or do we have an eye towards rehabilitation and making good citizens out of people who maybe need some extra support, need some extra help? That doesn't seem to be happening here.
No, well, and like as a conservative taxpayer, it offends me that that person is being locked up for 19 years.
Yes,
It's
me
like
too.
I don't, that person is not a
That's not
danger
a
in society.
danger. She's not a danger. No, but she may have some issues. She may need therapy. May need job
Well,
support. She may need
she's
something.
she's dirt poor because she's a convicted felon.
Yeah.
She
Oh,
doesn't have
right.
any.
That's the other thing I wanted to
Yeah,
address is that once you're a convicted felon, good luck getting a job. So this judge is telling Cindy, you have to keep full-time employment, but she's now a convicted child abuse. She's a convicted child abuser with a felony kidnapping or attempted
it
kidnapping. How
that
is she going to keep a job?
it halves your income. Getting a felony conviction halves your income.
I mean, she's already was working a minimum wage job as a cake decorator. Who knows if she'll even be able to get that back again?
Yeah, somebody Das Ogre says that can of spray paint was worth under $10, but because you have a prior theft, a second theft, the first one enhances that to a felony.
It's crazy. It's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I don't support stealing, but for crying out loud, 19 years, that's
Right.
did you appeal? Was that one of your cases? Did you appeal
Yes.
that? And
Yes.
she's still in jail.
Oh
What
yeah.
happened with the appeal? They
Rubber
upheld it.
stamped. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Affirmed without opinion. Just one of
Without
those.
opinion.
Yeah, because it's so obvious. So obvious that she's, it's ridiculous. Well,
Mm.
I'm one of the only clients that I actually am friends with because I got a lot of, I'm giving you the best stories for the defense side, right? I mean, there's tons of people, believe me, that are in prison rightfully, right? But I just want to kind of lean against so that people don't just knee-jerk react when they see a big media case that is, oh, that guy got let off on a technicality. That never happens. People get convicted on talities all the time. And jurisdiction is very important because I think in Florida, we're too harsh. Whereas other states and jurisdictions, they got these Soros prosecutors who are letting people out, right? So
rapists,
Right.
like
So,
violent criminals. Yeah.
You have to judge things on their individual merits. What was I going to tell you about the?
I guess maybe we have to ask ourselves too, like, what would we rather have? Would you rather live in a state like New York where rapists are literally being let go on their second and third offenses to push you in front of a subway car or whatever the hell they're going to do next? Or would you rather live in a state like Florida where, because there appears to be no medium, there appears to be no in between?
Well, there are good prosecutors, and like I was saying, the prosecutor team over in Hillsborough County is doing a very good job on this death penalty case. So is the defense team and the judge. I mean, it's a good working. If you want to see a good, clean
Which
trial,
case is this?
It's the one Legal Vices and I are covering right now. It's going on. It's a death penalty case. It's the guy that stabbed his girlfriend.
The stabby guy, the stabby. Yeah, I sat in on that one. The
Face.
Stabby McStab face. Yeah, he's got a prior. He stabbed another girl too.
Right.
So, that's an interesting one.
I was doing Legal Vices just before I came on here and watched that girl's testimony. But a great defense attorney, great prosecution team, great judge, functioning courtroom the way it should be done. And what the prosecutor article I have, prosecutors need to be that way at every level. They need to be that fair with everybody. Like the prosecution team in the Darrell Brooks trial. Prosecution team was A+. They kept it clean. They presented a clean case.
The defense, though.
F minus. F minus. Yeah.
Did we cover subject jurisdiction? That's what I
Grounds.
Speaking of, head over to the merch store if you haven't already and pick up your Grounds coffee mug. Because you'll find that in the description. Look, it says, would it be fair to say Grounds? There's also Prison Orange.
I hate the fact that he used that, to be fair to say, because I use that a lot in my...
Well, now you're never going to be able to say it again.
It's like taking away one of my tools, my trial tools.
It's like how Elaine screwed up and messed up. What was her big line? When she thought it cured every objection. In the Johnny Depp trial. What was it? Chat, help me out, because this was a good one too. What was Elaine always saying that we were always making fun of? I can't believe I can't remember now. What?
I thought you meant Elaine from Seinfeld. I was like,
no,
Elaine?
From the Johnny Elaine.
I didn't watch Johnny Depp. I don't.
You didn't watch that trial?
No, I don't watch much. See, I don't.
That
watch
trial
much.
Was insane. It was so good.
It was
so good.
The only thing I did see was this little clip Well, first of all, I watched Kate Moss. Come on, gotta
Well,
watch
who
Kate
didn't?
Moss. Get that that little. I mean, not only is she beautiful, but she's got that little magical fluty voice that just. I mean, English accent. Come on. But the other thing I watched was this part about the Gorgon. Like there was a really good article I'd read. I don't know where it was about the Medusa and she was Medusa. Like
That was
look into
me.
my eyes.
I wrote
Yeah,
that.
that was freaking incredible. I shared that with my son and my wife.
I
Passed
wrote
it.
that.
That was great. I forgot you. I didn't know you wrote that. That was the best article. So great.
What if
That was-
any? Thank you, Melinda. What if any?
What if it?
Elaine was always going, what if any? After the objection to leading or something, she would go, well, what if any? And then just ask the same question again. It never worked. It was just funny. But yeah, the
No, that
Medusa one,
Medusa
that was
article
me. I wrote that.
That was brilliant. Brilliant. And that was amazing.
And Stephanie will be upset if I don't mention that it was her idea. So when
Oh, that's your is
my
Stephanie-
sister, yes, my sister, she and I were having a conversation one day about the archetypes in this trial that were
Oh,
like just,
loved
you
it.
know, so clear, you know, like trying to avoid looking at
Yeah, it's like Jung is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then it's here like, oh, she's the Medusa, right? Seducing him. And it's like, look into my eyes one more time, right? And I
Yes.
can paralyze you fear, right? And he's like,
Yes.
you'll never see my eyes again. I
You'll
mean,
never
God, it's
see
like,
my eyes again. It was poetic, really. I mean, I don't know how anybody didn't see it. Here, I'll show you guys. I think it's on our
it's totally
VIP.
Stephanie Kimbrell's your sister.
Yeah, it's on our VIP section. And right now, this week, you can get 45% off of PJ Media's VIP. It is if you use the promo code VIP week, you will get 45% off, which is the best sale they ever have. So
Yeah, that's
do it
That's
now.
the article. That is
Ancient
the best.
Archetypes, Amber Heard, and how to avoid both.
This is one of the best articles I have ever read. I'm telling you. See, and this is the thing. I loved your writing before I ever knew that you were like ever met in this thing. I just like, man, I shared this with my son. We talked about it with my wife. I use this ammo on somebody like a lot of my ideas I just steal from others. And I was like, this is just brilliant.
Yeah, it was a good Stephanie is pointing out it was all her idea.
Totally.
We were talking about it. It's true. It was her idea.
You know how to write. Where did you learn how to write, Megan?
I've been writing since the 5th grade. I remember my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Weirs, she used to encourage me and tell me that I was good at it, and I enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed it. And then I journaled for a very long time. I have boxes of journals in the basement that I just can't throw out. I want to throw them out because I'm sure whatever's in there is highly embarrassing. And I'm like, I better throw them out before I die, because when I die, somebody's going to go through them and probably publish them, and that would be very upsetting to me. But
go through that or quick before
yeah. But it's it's been something that I've never been able to stop myself from doing. It's not something that I can stop.
This male-female dynamic here is brilliant, because see the thing, and I think this was the end of like Believe All Women. Because women, and I've represented women and men, and men are on the district. If you know your Jordan Peterson, we have the agreeableness scales, right? So all the most disagreeable men, all the most disagreeable people are men, and all the most agreeable people are women, right? That doesn't mean that you're more agreeable than me. It just means 6 out of 10 and the edges, right? But I've dealt with women, and women have their own warfare and their own tactics, and this is a great insight into female manipulation, female tactics, female dysfunction, and how they work. Because I'm married to one, and she's an angel. She's perfect, but
and I mean, I wrote an entire book about this too. Where is it? Here it is.
Really?
It's called "Believe Evidence: The Death of Due Process from Salome to #MeToo," and it is about treacherous women who lied to keep men to put men in prison. Or here's what it looks like.
Wow, look at that. That's interesting.
Women who either lied to have men murdered, like Jezebel.
Where is that available? Where can we get
Amazon. That? It's on Amazon. It's
What's
on
the best way
Barnes
for you to
and
buy
Noble. I guess Amazon probably the best way. I might have one around here I can send you.
No, I'll buy it.
In fact, I think I do. Yes, I do. I will send you one.
No, you don't.
I'll send you one. I want to send you a signed copy. You sent me a signed copy of your book, so I'll make sure I send you one of mine.
I'm a fanboy. I'm just a fanboy. That's
all. Oh no, I'll send you one for sure. And it's about women. It's about the idea that we can't just believe all women. We have to believe the evidence, and evidence should tell you that women sometimes can be treacherous, sometimes have lied to put men in prison, have lied about rape. The Scottsboro Nine, that's one of the stories that I feature in this book, is a really terrible story about two white women who lied about 9 black boys on a train because they didn't want to get in trouble for where they were. And so they said they were gang raped, and those poor boys were almost lynched. And many of them spent several years in prison. And it's just a terrible story of injustice. We should never, ever just believe women on the face of it. Absolutely
well, Stephanie's, that's your sister. It says,
yeah,
women lie just as often as men. And it's been a wake-up call, because men, we have this natural protective instinct. And you see a woman cry, or you see somebody in trouble, and you have it's an innate emotion to protect.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson is the one who actually inspired me to write the book, because when I was on his program, and I was telling him, don't trust women because they will lie to you, and he says, I guess I just do. I do. I just innately, I just do. I find that hard to believe. And I was like, oh God, you better get over it, because don't do that. I mean, if you've never known any women the way I've known women, and most women know this.
I know. Well, I think women know it, but men don't.
No, they just don't seem to
and
see it.
And the women take advantage of that. I don't know. Thank God I don't have the model face, because I'm blessed, because it's a blessing sometimes not to be in the top 10. What's the women category? 10% or 15%?
I don't know. I encourage women to always go for the nice guy, because the bad guy is always going to make you cry. So go for the nice guy if you possibly can.
Well, also there's so many pathologies in our society. I mean, it's frightening, and men and women, we're really, I would be hard. I've got a son who's 18, and whoever gets him is going to hit the jackpot. Let me tell you, he is my gift to the world. He is the greatest kid.
Hopefully he will pick a good one, because man, women can be brutal. And these days, I understand men who don't want to get married, who decide they've sworn off marriage because divorce court is so crippling.
Right.
And women,
that's the men on strike, the Helen.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And I find myself feeling very lucky that I found my soulmate, that I found my husband, and we've been together for 22 years and still going. And I feel like I just missed it. Like
it's almost,
I got in just under the gun, before it all fell apart. It's
almost an argument for traditional dating and traditional marriage, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is.
Because it's like there's no answer like this.
But without destroying divorce court, without rehauling that whole system, I don't see it coming back, Steve. I really don't. Because the divorce court system is set up to destroy families. Yes. And so it makes people not want to start families in the first place. That is the true crime here.
The society is very anti-children. It's anti-life. And I talk about this. I wanted to talk about this with you because I have, sometimes I think about things, but I don't have a foil. It's good to discuss. This is why free speech is important, because I've got this idea, and it's a nebulous, because I'm extremely pro-life. And that means I'm pro-life in the beginning, and I'm pro-life at the end. I don't want the death penalty. Yeah. And I'm pro-life in the middle. I'm pro-life the whole way, because like Pope John Paul, you'd say that, the culture of life rather than the culture of death. And how this culture of death impacts us. And part of it is that anti-human, like this whole environmental movement. Yeah. It's basically, we want people to starve because we don't want to have anything, because people starve as a
particular salamander is suffering. Yes.
Right. And it's the same thing. So how do you express that? Like, how would you express the culture of death? Not in the beginning, at the end, but in the middle.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think it's clear that the anti-child stance that our culture has is terrible. I mean, children are treated as property and have no rights, really no rights at all. When you think about what they're supposed to, you're supposed to have a right to your parents, but look at CPS, for instance. The CPS can take your children from you if you have dirty dishes in the sink and you get a social worker who doesn't like that. Children are supposed to have a right to their parents, and parents are supposed to have a right to their children, but you don't. All you need is some GED social worker to come in and grab them from you.
Well, and the other thing is we get this going on the anti-children thing. A lot of women are told like, oh, having a child is such a burden and you got to wait and you got to do this.
Yeah, right.
Having my child is the best thing ever happened to me and my wife. And we talk about all the
Yeah,
time.
I
It's like,
agree.
he's a gift from God. Makes me a better person. It allows me to get outside my own
Yeah, the
self.
messaging around children in general is just so terrible. It's always
It's a
about
lie.
it's always about how they will ruin your life. Well, that's just not true.
It is a lie. It is a
It's
lie.
also that children are expensive. No, they're not. Babies are actually really cheap. You talk about you can feed them free for a year if you're breastfeeding. People give you clothes, like they literally just walk up and give you boxes of clothes. Your neighbors will just offload all their old clothes onto you. I didn't pay for my son's wardrobe till he was 4 years old. That's how many hand-me-down clothes I got from family and friends.
And they add so much joy to your life.
So much.
It's
so much.
everything. I mean, my
Stephanie
life.
wants to bring up vaccine mandates, saying, that's a culture of death as well. Yeah, mandating you not having control over what you want to put in your body, that they view us as property, Steve.
And it's
We're
not
property of the government.
Well, it's not a vaccine because it does not protect you against the virus. So that's not a vaccine.
No, it's a therapy, but
It's some sort of
but they're
drug.
lying about what it is.
Well, and forget that, okay, fine, you're
therapeutic.
lying. Well, you know how much Pfizer made on this vaccine last year?
Oh, it has to be
$20 billion.
billions. Yep, 20 billions.
So there's an incentive there. And the thing is, it's like, okay, so we're through this whole thing. Let me just ask you, because I had to advise my son, who's young, who I'm in custody of, right? Do I inject him? Well, it's not going to protect him. And the chances of him dying of COVID are like 0.000001, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what is the chance of some side effect from this? Well, I'm just asking the question. Let's have some studies. Let's have some questions about this. I can't even ask the question. That makes me distrust it even more.
I know.
And you know how these things are, they got a big committee, just like the committee on the jury instructions. You got a big committee up in
unelected,
DC,
and they're not elected,
all appointed by the industry to say, do we think that it's good to appoint the Pfizer drug? Why, yes, we're all Pfizer employees.
We watched that here on this channel. We watched the CDC recommend that they add the COVID vaccine to the childhood schedule. And was that a total exercise in ass kissing? That's all it was. Ass kissing the industry, ass kissing the doctors. And everyone was in total agreement. It was a unanimous vote to add this experimental vaccine that we have no long-term studies on to the childhood schedule. And you know what comes next is that states like New York, where I am, are going to mandate it for children in school. It is so upsetting to me that we don't have enough people to stand up and be like, excuse me, we're not mandating anything that hasn't had a 20-year safety record.
Well,
No.
thankfully, Florida, we're well governed and we don't have that problem. But I did homeschool my child for the last 2 years of his schooling. Now, the impact of what they did to the schools has had a profound impact. We found like 68, I think it was 68%.
That's another way you can tell they don't give a shit about kids. They care less. They could care less. They shut down their schools. They shut down all their activities, all their sports, all their graduations, dances, social activity. They created an entire generation of kids who now have anxiety and depression. And
the Democrat leftists who want to destroy the country, they want to destroy our kids. They want people to be dependent, and uneducated, not questioning,
medicated.
And I really like my operative example to the hard left is that they want to destroy the country. Everything that they do, it's like they want to destroy the country. They hate, their self-loathing, and they project onto the country all their hatreds and all of their miseries and all their bad decisions. That's my operative thing. Because I got a happy life. I'm like, why do you want to do this? So anyway, thankfully, my son was in the top 30% of kids who thrived in an online environment. And we have something in Florida called Florida Virtual School. So I homeschooled, but really it was Florida Virtual School with people. And it's funny because when I called the school to pull him out, at first they're giving me, the bureaucrats, and we have a pretty good school district, but it's like, well, that if he does that, he can't walk with our children, and they're giving me, he can't get a diploma. He's not going to get a real diploma, right? And they're giving me all this negative. And finally, I'm like, yeah, I know that. No problem. Give me the form. Here's the form. And it's like, and then finally they're like, oh, but please send him back because he's a good student, right? So they want him, but at first it's like they threaten. They're going to hit you. It's like, well, I understand all that. I don't need him to walk. That's
Mhm.
ridiculous. But they want to threaten you, and then once you've made that decision, it's like, oh no, please come back. I
This
really,
is how the government now has decided is the best way to govern is through threats and intimidation. If I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's a thing now.
right,
Threats and intimidation is their first go-to.
right.
Not the last resort. It's their first resort. And this is where, and I'm the kind of person, Steve, where if you threaten me, I double down. I don't want. I'm like I'm the make me generation. I'm
See,
Generation
I've
X.
been told that I'm the male Megan Fox, and I said that's great.
Yeah, I refuse all threats and intimidation. Thank you, Stephanie. That's true. And I was this close to getting that stupid vaccine. I was this close because I live in New York and it was very clear to me that my life was going to get a whole lot more difficult if I didn't do it. And I thought, well, I may have to, maybe, we'll see. And then the mandate came down and I was like, oh, well, now I'm never doing it. If you're going to tell me that I have to, now I'm going to say no. It was my choice. I wanted the choice. I was probably going to go with it. And then they said, you can't go to this restaurants unless you have one. I was like, oh no. Yeah, here's my answer to that. I don't care. I'll never go to a restaurant again. How about that? I don't
That's
care.
right.
You want to go out of business? That's fine. I'll
I
never
know,
go out
but
to eat again.
the nanny state has gotten so overwhelmingly powerful because it's like, okay, if they can shut you down on YouTube, they can put a muzzle on you from broadcasting and from publishing. What about, well, you're a conservative, you got questions about this thing. Well, can we take away your phone? Can we take away your water? Can we shut off your electricity?
Because you know what's coming next? Chinese style social
Social credit system
credit
is very
system.
dangerous.
And you'll be required to carry your phone everywhere you go, just like they are in China. And you will be rated on your behavior in public, and your behavior on social media. And you will be debanked if they don't like it, and you will be kicked off all travel if they don't like it. That's exactly what they're doing in China. If you guys don't see that coming, and the one way to stop it from coming here is to say no to digital currency. Say absolutely no fucking way am I ever going to do digital currency. Say no. That's what the globalists all want right now is everybody on digital currency. We have to say no to that.
Well,
we have to keep
the other
cash.
thing, I've got my second book that I'm working on. I've got actually 3 more books in very diverse areas that I've been working on. And I don't know which one I'm going to, I got so much work. You don't even know.
Believe me, I feel you.
You know what I'm talking about. But one of the books that I think I've got halfway written. I've got to write more on this one, but I've got half of it written. And it's called Prepare. And, people are like the prepping community, the survivalist community, they say, which I have some sympathies for, but I think it goes too far, and it oftentimes becomes an excuse to be a gun collector. but there's also something that I have a friend of mine, Dr. Reynolds, I talked to him about earlier. He says, I've got multiple friends who tell me the strength of America is the fact that we have our own homes, we are independent, we don't need the government, we can be self-sufficient, and we can tell the government go to hell, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is like if you're in Russia and you live in an apartment and you've got the subway and you're in you are dependent completely on this central government, whereas they don't have any ownership in private. So part of being prepared is not only having your firearms and having your food and your water stock, but also being spiritually prepared, community prepared, and out of debt so that you own your home, and that you are not enslaved to some bank or anything else, that you are an independent, free citizen.
And know how to survive on the earth God gave us, because you can't always depend on the grocery store. I don't know about you, but I can't even find half and half anymore at the grocery store. Every time I go looking for it, it's gone. And there's things that we haven't seen in a very long time, that the shelves are empty and stuff. So you guys, if you're not ready for it, you need to have big bags of rice and some beans in your basement.
Go in my book.
Yeah.
And on the back chapter, I wrote, some of this is so much fun. I just love writing my own book because it's like, I'm just going to put it in there anyway because it doesn't really fit, but who cares? It's my book. And one of them is page 239 is a recommended reading list.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at should be the last or second to last book. Yeah, here's last book. It's on page 244. Mm-hmm. When money dies, The Nightmare of Deficit Spending, Devaluation, and Hyperinflation in Weimar, Germany by Adam Ferguson, 1975. See that? That is an essential reading because we are doing everything we can to destroy the value of our currency and to create hyperinflation. And this is a good history of what happened in Weimar, Germany in the hyperinflation, which brought about the Nazi regime. And, so much.
Gee, that sounds like a really interesting book.
This is a great book, and this has impacted my life because I see it. It's happening in our country.
I think it's interesting that you put Hamlet in here.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I preferred The Taming of the Shrew, but I like the comedies. Hamlet was depressing as hell.
Well, it's funny because, I can't say that it's like I love it. What I can say is that it's had an impact on me.
Yeah.
It always comes up.
Shakespeare, man. I mean, Shakespeare does always come up, right? I mean, always.
It's like, gee,
and I don't know. I'll tell you the book that I would recommend is right here. This is the Shakespeare Insult Generator. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
No,
this is one of the greatest books on earth. So you just flip open a page and you get 3 choices. And this is a good way to insult people. You gore-bellied, pale-hearted parasite. And there's it's all kinds of different insults. Plumpy, swag-bellied pin buttock. There's some great stuff in here.
The problem is that I live in a glass house, so I try not to insult anybody because I know that I'm a nice, worthy target, and I'm really sensitive.
I find this comes in handy a lot in my line of work.
That's
but
funny.
Shakespeare always comes up, always. But Shakespeare is always relevant, and it bothers me. My children have really not learned any Shakespeare in their schooling, and they
when you got Heather Has Two Mommies, who needs Hamlet?
Oh God, it's terrible because Shakespeare is really Western, the height of Western civilization as far as learning about where we come from and who we are. You cannot do better than Shakespeare. You just can't.
Right. Yes. Well, one of the best things in public, and we have a pretty good school district. I wouldn't say we've had our encounters with the lefties, but pretty good. And one of the teachers he had when he was going to high school did all they did was study Romeo and Juliet. That was a whole semester on Romeo and Juliet. They went through the whole thing. They set the classroom up.
I think we did the same thing in high school. We spent an entire semester on Romeo and Juliet.
I was so happy. I mean, it was like such meat and potatoes stuff.
Yeah.
And he came home. He's excited. He's telling me about it. I'm like, man, there's something to be said for classic. Oh, I wanted to talk. We got so much to talk about. We could go on forever. That I wanted to talk to you about what you were saying yesterday. I caught a little bit of your stream, and you were talking about some banning books thing, and you were showing pornographic books. The thing is that, and I sent you a chat on this because you don't have the Library of Congress at your school. You've got a limited shelf space. You got a limited things, and you got to say, okay, we know something more than you children, right? And we are going to pick out of all the books in the world. Here are some ones that if you read, that you would become a better person who would allow you to grow and allow you to move forward.
Yeah, but instead they're doing this. This is what they're.
Oh God, I know. You don't have to show it.
I know. It's so bad.
And it's I mean,
shame on you.
Yes. And
so bad. I mean,
here's the thing. It's like
unacceptable.
They deserve it. They deserve everything that's coming. I mean, they just deserve everything that's coming. And somebody made mention the other day on Twitter that the world needs Batman, but it's going to get a Punisher. And that is a really good point. We've pushed people to such an edge that there's no coming back from this when you're giving children that kind of material in school and calling it
this is again
enriching.
It's child abuse.
It is child abuse.
It's, a sex offender. The problem with sex offenses is that they are sexualizing children when you are robbing a child of their childhood and their innocence. And by pushing this stuff in public schools at these lower grades, you are sexualizing children and robbing them of their innocence. They don't care about this stuff when they're in kindergarten or elementary school. I mean, of course, I can say I remember I had a crush on a girl in 3rd grade. So I guess but I mean, I thought like maybe I could hold her hand, right? That would be like, I'm thinking maybe you get a kiss, that would be great. But I mean, this stuff, come on, who needs that? I didn't learn about that stuff until middle school, at least in 9th grade, right? But now
Yeah.
we're robbing these little kids of their innocence and their sexual, and that's none of their business. Don't teach them that stuff. Teach them how to read, teach them how to write, teach them how to do math, teach them how to read Shakespeare. There's so much stuff. Teach them some history. This is because by teaching this garbage, you're crowding out important stuff. You're crowding out the things that make us citizens, that are valuable. Read the, one of the books, this reading list is Locke's Second Treatise. How many people have read Locke's Second Treatise? That is one of the most influential documents in American civilization. It is the foundation of our republic. But do they read that? No, we don't have time for that because we got to read Heather Has Two Mommies, right?
God, it's sick. And there's so much out there that's so good, like you've mentioned, so much that kids would love. I mean, even now, my daughter did read this year, or maybe it was last year, Lord of the Flies, which was one that we read.
Great book.
Great book. I mean, it still comes up to this day. Still comes up to this day. Is it in there? Is it one of your recommended?
It's in there. Yes, it is.
Lord
of the Flies, William Golding, right there.
It still comes up to this day when I'm writing, and I pull from it for references all the time. It's books like that stick with you. The ones that stick with you.
My son
I hated The Crucible. They made us read it a couple of times, but the truth is that's a great book too. And
Yes,
I
agree.
and it came back to me many, many times. It's a great play, and it came back many, many times. But I remember hating going through it at the time.
Well, my son read The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
And he loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're reading that too. I think they're reading that this year. So they are still doing
How
some
old are your
classics.
kids?
I have a 17 or going on 17-year-old, 13-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So my almost 17-year-old she's the one who was reading Lord of the Flies, and then now they're doing The Great Gatsby this year. And so they are still reading some of these classics, thank goodness. But they need more Shakespeare. More Shakespeare. That's my recommendation.
By doing these other stupid propaganda sexualizing books, you are pushing an agenda that is harmful to kids. Harmful, and you are crowding out food, steak and potatoes, the thing that makes life great, makes life beautiful, which is great literature. I mean, the myth of Medusa. Look at how boy, that I'll tell you, I don't know. See, this is the thing. I'm so stupid. I got to say, that's one of the best articles I've ever written.
Aw, I did not pay him to say this. I did not pay him to say this, I swear.
But that's how I'm saying. Like, I'm always impressed. I'm so proud to be on here with the great Megan Fox.
You're so sweet.
You're so good. You're such a great writer. And you have, it's not just your good writing, but you have insights into humanity, and you're making points that are very powerful in a comment, like the things that you cover, like these school board meetings. This is all over the country. Like, my little death penalty things, if people are interested in it, right? It's fascinating, but it's so rare. If the death penalty went away, it would be a marginal impact in the world. If you got the death penalty, it's a marginal impact on the world. But what you're talking about things that have an impact on everybody, the future civilization of our country, which is what they're being taught in schools. That's where the battleground is, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have always wanted to bring attention to these school board meetings and these local library board meetings, because I truly believe that the national politics scene is a shit show. And if you really want to make a difference, you're going to do it on a local level. Right. But it has to be. But people have to understand why it's important and how it's important. And that's why Alex Stein is kind of my spirit animal. He goes to these things and Alex Stein, you don't know who Alex Stein? You haven't seen, oh, come on, Steve, this is so good.
I'm not really, see.
Hold on, I have to show you now. I have to show you one of Alex Stein's greatest moments. Hold on. He goes to different town halls and he punks them, basically. But what he's doing is bringing attention to important issues that we're not, he's basically making people see that town halls are the places where these things are done. This is where the work gets done. Well, nobody ever paid any attention to him. And he said he used to go and speak, normally and calmly, and no one ever paid any attention.
Oh, wait a second. No, I think I do know this guy.
This is probably the first time that I saw him.
Okay, yes. I'm
and I laughed so hard, I thought I was going to die.
Oh, I've seen that. This is hilarious. I didn't know was this like a regular thing.
Oh, yeah, he does it all over the country, mostly in Dallas, because that's where he lives.
Sorry, guys. Okay. My name's Alex Stein. I'm here today because we got to vaccinate our children. You know, we really don't have enough vaccines.
He's
Like, they're
all
not
out of
mandatory,
breath.
and that's the problem. We got to mandate these vaccines. So I've figured a way where I think we can make it, I don't know, like, I guess more hip and cool for, my phone's not working. I'm trying to get, what I want to say is we got to vaccinate our kids. We have to vaccinate them fast and early. But of course, my phone's not playing. But I had a song that I wanted to do. And of course, it never works when you're trying to make it work. But I guess we'll just have to freestyle it. But will the real Dr. Fauci please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. Vaccinate your mom. Vaccinate your dad. Vaccinate the happy. Vaccinate the sad. Vaccinate your babies. Vaccinate them, even if they got rabies. Vaccinate my life. Vaccinate my wife. Vaccinate your DNA. Vaccine created by the CIA. Vaccinate your body. Vaccinate me at the party. Vaccination freak. Vaccination freak a leak. I want the vaccine in my life. I want the vaccine for my wife. I want to vaccinate you all day long. Vaccinate you while I wear my thong. Vaccinate me. Vaccinate who? Vaccinate she. Vaccinate her. Vaccinate them. Vaccinate my friend. I want to vaccinate to the end. Vaccinate me, pure L. I love you. What can I say? DNA, I love you. I've got the pure L, feeling pure. So clean. Got the Lysol, because I'm calling Paul. Do you got to clean the mic? You got to vaccinate. You going to get corona from Mona. Don't vaccinate. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. You got to vaccinate in the Lone Star State. Vaccination is so great. Vaccinate me all day long. Vaccinate your daddy and mom. Vaccinate my body. Vaccinate me at the party. A vaccine dream. I love the vaccine all day long. I want to vaccinate your mom. I want to stick it deep in your arm. Oh my, where are you? I want to vaccinate you, but you can't hear my song. Vaccinate me in my thong. Vaccination, right or wrong. Dr. Fauci, give me that ouchie. I want it in my body. Vaccinate me to go to the party. Omar is back. Vaccinate me, white or black. Vaccinate you. Vaccinate who? Vaccinate you all day long. Vaccinate your dad and mom. Vaccinate me in my thong. Vaccinate the mayor. I am a vaccination player. What can I say?
All over his shirt.
I'm the real round sayer. Prime time. 99 on the ground. All the time. I blow your mind. I spit the rhyme. I commit the crime. I'm always on time because I'm 99. Alex, and I grind and shine and I blow your mind. One more time. Vaccinate your mind. Vaccinate your body. Vaccinate your life if you're vaccination party. I love y'all. Peace. God bless. Follow my Instagram. IG.
Your time is up.
Prime time time.
The best part is the people on the panel going, your time is up.
This is the thing. I mean, free speech, humor, mockery, this is what we need. I mean, the thing is, I could never do that in a million years. First of all, I couldn't keep it together. I don't have the talent. But, we as everybody has their talent and their gift they can bring to these problems, right? And this guy, I fully support
what he
the
does
mockery and the.
What he does is so great because, look, here's the thing. What he does is he brings attention to the fact that these are the people where all the change happens. This is where it happens. And if you're going, what he's doing is making it kind of cool to show up at these meetings, right? Because you never know what might happen. I mean, when I go to meetings, now I have my own style that I have done at these board meetings. And this is what I've tried to bring to my audience, is to show them what you can do and what you are allowed to do, what the law allows for the public to bring grievances against the board. Have you seen this one, Steve? Have you seen me go off at the board? I was talking to a school. I was not planning on doing this. Farron and I were on, and we were just watching a board meeting where Gays Against Groomers were speaking, and some other Moms for Liberty were speaking against these grooming books and curriculum in the school. And I wasn't going to say anything, but I watched this board violate people's rights over and over again. And I finally had enough. And I was like, I'm going to tell them. And I'm still considering suing them. I have a lawyer looking at it right now for what they did to me here. Watch this. This is my style.
Please state your name and address.
All right. Hello, my name is Megan Fox, and I'll tell you why I'm not going to give you my address. For one, I just read your Wisconsin Rules of Open Meetings Act. It's a law. And the law in Wisconsin is that the public has a right to participate in your meetings, and nowhere in it does it say that anyone has to dox themselves online in order to participate in a public meeting.
Watch their faces.
I want you to know that school boards like yourselves have been sued successfully before in the past for doing this. It's considered an intimidation technique. Now, you can sigh and put your face in your hands, but you need to listen to me when I tell you that you can be sued for what you're doing. You are violating people's rights. And what you did today by cutting off public comment in the beginning of the meeting when you had a full house of people who wanted to speak to you, and you made them wait 2 hours, and most of them had to go home because they had to work jobs tomorrow, or because they had to get kids somewhere, or because they had to go home and get dinner. What you did is violating the public's First Amendment rights to address their public bodies for grievances. It is a violation of the Constitution, and you should each be ashamed. Sharon, you should be ashamed of yourself. Leanne, you should be ashamed of yourself. Michael, you should be ashamed of yourself. And you too, Jenny, and you too, Jessica. And let me tell you something else. When people use names in front of your school board and they come in and they say, I want to talk to you about a specific person on the board, you are not allowed to tell them that their First Amendment right to speak is curtailed in some way because they want to use a name. That is illegal. What you are doing is against the Wisconsin Open Meetings Act. Now, listen, I have 3 minutes, and I know that my time is not up. You are not to interrupt me while I am speaking. This is public comment time, and I'm a member of the public. You can sit there and be as uncomfortable as you want, but I have this 3 minutes. So listen to me, Michael. When you are talking to people, when they come here to see you, you are put into this position, by the way, by the people of this town. They are your first priority.
Surprise. Where are you?
They are your first priority.
Come rescue us.
They are the people you're responsible
Did you need me to
to.
mute this?
Yes.
Why would you mute me?
Okay.
My
I
3
couldn't
minutes
hear
are
the
not
debate.
up. My 3 minutes are not up.
Muted me.
We started respecting individual board members.
And then he goes on to say, I have the right as the chair to cut off comments that are, how did he put it? That are not in alignment with the dignity of the board. Can you believe this crap?
Well, one of the problems with, I don't know, there's some bigger problems here. I mean, you're looking at a micro individual situation here. One of the problems is we have so much government. We have so many of these little boards and so many little city commissions and so many little advisory things and so many. The government wields such power, and you have a limited talent pool. Like your talents, you're expending your time at this 3 minutes and fighting this petty battle in this little school board that means nothing, right? But when you multiply this over the countryside and they're dotted, and we've got all these jurisdictions where everybody should be involved in every one of them. But we as the public, I got a job, you've got a job, we got work to do, right? We're actually, the activists are the ones that can show up and do that. The government bureaucrats who are paid by the government to be there,
Amazing.
They're the ones
how
that can do it.
few people know that these boards violate the Constitution every day.
Yes.
I'm the only people I know of who will go and say,
I love it.
You are violating the Constitution. You don't get to tell me what to say. You don't get to say what kind of speech I use, and you don't get to tell me this or that. I'm your supervisor.
Can I make a suggestion though?
Back off. Like,
I've got a suggestion.
Drive me nuts. Yeah.
In fact, I'm thinking about, this is one of my ideas for my Rumble channel. I put a lot of just random ideas up there, whatever I'm thinking, it's like all over the place. And one of them is because we have these people called First Amendment checks or Second Amendment checks or, audits where they'll go to the police department, they'll ask for lists.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll walk with a gun or something and they'll do these
That's
different
what I
things.
do at these public meetings sometimes.
Right. Okay. Well, here's my advice, because I love that. And I think that it's necessary. But I think that we as conservatives and people that are doing these type things need to do it within a broader context. You need to have a team, for instance, a lawyer involved, and be very targeted and specific, because that's what
you just never know when they're going to do it. That's the problem. You never know when they're going to do these things. Like, I wasn't expecting them to violate everyone's rights that night and stop people from speaking who wanted to say something. You know what they did, Steve? So if you went up there and you were like, Mary on the board has been so wonderful. She helped me with this calendar that we made, and it was just lovely. They'd oh, thank you.
Let me give you extra
But
time.
then you would go, but then you would say, well, I didn't like what Mary did. Mary did this thing that I didn't like, and they would cut you off immediately and say, you're not allowed to address the board members. Oh, but I am allowed to give them compliments by name. Excuse me? No. Higher circuit courts have already ruled you're not allowed to do that. You're just supposed to sit there and take
but
it.
it's all empty unless you have the backup. And this is what I'm saying is if you have a team, if you have an organization.
Oh, well, I'm working on it. I'm
I'm
working on it, Steve.
Right.
I've got some lawyers looking at it. We're going to try.
And maybe it's because see, I do criminal appeals, and I have a criminal client who took it upon himself to be a gadfly and get real into it with his local police department. And he was
probably not a good idea.
Yes, well, I'm for it, but when you're doing that, you better damn well know what you're doing.
Yeah, especially with the police.
And have legal backup, and so that you're part of, you aren't alone, because he goes and confronts it and he's alone and he thinks he's right. And then all of a sudden he's wrong, and now he's in prison. So, so I'm just saying that as smart conservatives, I think we need to be very tactical and be have a lawyer on board who advises you. And so when you go into these things consciously, because we can make a difference, but I think that in order to be really effective and to effectuate change, we need to be targeted because we have limited resources.
One of the things you have to do is to get their board policy notes, and I got their notes. I got their policy afterwards about their public comment, and their public comment policy is actually unconstitutional in several different ways, which is why I'm looking forward to hearing back from the lawyers that are looking at it now, because I think I have a slam dunk case. And I think that
there's no such thing as a slam dunk case.
This one might be.
First lawyer will tell you that's not that. Don't ever say.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Slam dunk.
I had a slam dunk case in Orland Park. We won a $55,000 judgment for the same thing. I don't know. You guys need to pick up this book. It's called "Shut Up: The Bizarre War That One Public Library Waged Against the First Amendment." This one was also an open and shut FOIA, Open Meetings Act violations. We got them for $55,000.
Here's another thing. All these librarians that are.
I'm pretty good at this.
I'm not. I'm just talking for your audience, because sometimes you get people listening to us, and they, I don't want people to get a wrong idea or go do something they shouldn't. Right? You got to be very.
You can never be in the wrong by going to your public board and speaking out about whatever it is you want to speak out about, because you have that right. And also, just as an update to last night's show, the father Tim Ryland in Owasso. He won his legal battle.
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because
the judge came back and he won his legal battle. The ruling that the judge made is so good. It's incredible. In fact,
are you going to write about it?
Where is it?
You should write about that. That would be.
Yeah. I'm going to write about it for sure. But let me pull it up here, because this order is so great. Here it is. This order is so good.
See, but now what if it had been that judge out in Colorado?
Yeah, well,
she would. That's why you got to be careful.
You get what you get. Well, this is Oklahoma, so luckily it was a real judge who knows what he's talking about. So if we go down to the, decision. This is so great. As discussed in the court's temporary restraining order to establish a retaliation claim under the First Amendment, the following elements must be satisfied. The plaintiff was engaged in constitutionally protected activity. The defendant's actions caused the plaintiff to suffer an injury that would chill a person of ordinary firmness from continuing to engage in that activity. The defendant's adverse action was substantially motivated as a response to the plaintiff's exercise of constitutionally protected conduct. All right, so now let's go down here. This is funny. Okay.
Is this a temporary restraining order? Is this
this is a permanent injunction now. He had the temporary restraining order, but now he has the permanent injunction, which is great. Plaintiff was not distributing flyers or otherwise using the parking lot as a platform to advance any agenda. Rather, the evidence shows that plaintiff had a 17-second interaction with a fellow patron regarding his criticism of the board.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The court is not entirely persuaded that the parking lot is a non-public forum under this particular set of circumstances. The school tried to say that the parking lot is not public.
The school parking lot. The taxpayer bought for school parking lot.
Which you could absolutely protest in, by the way. I mean,
yes.
Regardless, even if the parking lot is considered a non-public forum here, plaintiff is still likely to succeed on the merits. Access to a non-public forum can be restricted as long as the restrictions are reasonable and are not an effort to suppress the expression merely because public officials oppose the view. Now, down here, this is so funny. This judge is awesome. We can skip this. I want to get down to the decision.
Well, this is the key to being reasonable, and you got to be careful because not everybody has the personality to do prior restraint. Yeah, I'm looking at this. This is fascinating. You need to write about this.
I'm going to. I haven't read the entire thing, but I did read the decision, and it's really good.
Irreparable injury.
Really irreparable injury. The purpose of a preliminary injunction is not to remedy past harm, but to protect.
Did this guy have good counsel? I think he must have had a good lawyer.
I think so. But to protect the plaintiffs from irreparable injury that will surely result without their issuance. Although I think the more important part was he had a good judge, because the judge understood what was going on here. The plaintiff, therefore, must demonstrate a significant risk that he or she will experience harm that cannot be compensated after the fact by money damages. A plaintiff suffers irreparable injury when the court would be unable to grant an effective monetary remedy after a full trial because such damages would be inadequate or difficult to ascertain.
And this is federal.
Yes. Defendants argue that plaintiff will not suffer irreparable injury because the ban does not prevent plaintiff from speaking to school district employees regarding any concerns he has about the education of his children through email. Defendants point to several instances since the ban where plaintiff has communicated with various school staff members regarding aspects of his children's education. Oh, but they banned him from all sporting events and picking up his kid. While it is true that the plaintiff may communicate with the school district employees and the board members via email, letter, phone call, Google Meet, or other various forms of electronic communications, defendants ignore the injury plaintiff will suffer by not being able to physically attend his children's school events or attend board meetings. As stated earlier, while plaintiff may petition the board for a redress of grievances by email, letter, or phone call, defendants ignore that plaintiff is no longer able to meaningfully participate in board meetings. This type of intangible harm is exactly the type of harm injunctive relief was intended for. The court finds this factor weighs in favor of granting injunctive relief. I love it.
Awesome. That's a good, very well written order. I like it a lot. Yeah. Well, federal system is generally much cleaner like this. I mean, this is
Listen to the public interest. I like the public interest part. The court wants to make clear that it is in absolutely no way condoning harassing, intimidating, or threatening behavior, which he didn't do. Further, the court is not questioning defendants' right to remove individuals displaying harassing, intimidating, or threatening behavior under Oklahoma statute, whatever. However, the court has found that the evidence simply does not indicate that harassing, intimidating, or threatening behavior occurred here. While the court agrees that it is in the public's interest for the defendants to ensure the safety and security of students, staff, board members, and guests, the court finds that it is also in the public's interest to preserve and uphold First Amendment rights. Therefore, under the circumstances presented here, the court finds that the public interest favoring the protection of constitutional rights prevails. It is therefore ordered that Plaintiff Timothy Ryland's motion for temporary restraining order and temporary injunction is granted.
So it is a temporary restraining, but it's still this is a huge victory. Usually these things, you'll now get a consent decree probably from the school board attorney that says, look, we're going to lose. So,
well, look what this says. It says it's further ordered. It says right here that the court's temporary restraining order shall be converted into a preliminary injunction under applicable law. And then it's further ordered the defendants Independent School District number 11 of Tulsa and Owasso Public Schools and Margaret Coates in her official capacity as superintendent are hereby enjoined from banning plaintiff Timothy Ryland from Owasso Public School grounds as set forth in the letter from defendant Coates dated October 12th. So,
but finish it.
Can't do it.
Finish it.
Or as revised by subsequent Owasso School Board decision during the pendency of this action.
So it's during this is a temporary injunction, but this is a huge win. I mean, I will say that's a very well written order. It's a huge win. It's a temporary restraining order injunction. So basically, he's saying that they will probably succeed on the merits and that he gets his access rights. But this doesn't resolve the full case. But this is usually, like I said, federal action like this. If you get that temporary restraining order, you're going to win the overall thing. But this is sorry, I'm not really a civil lawyer. I just play one on TV.
But it's interesting because I think they're going to have to just drop it. Like, what do they want to do? They want to keep going with this, really? Because they've already been slapped down twice now.
Except that it's not the damn state money. It's like they're playing with the house money.
That's true.
Because these people are not individuals. So if they want to be stubborn, that they can fight and make the lawyers money, which the lawyers are happy about. But I don't know. And you've got a good judge here. The problem is if you're in DC and you've got some unfriendly judge, you could be sucking wind, So
it's absolutely true. And it's too bad that we even have to say that like,
it is
that there could be a judge who doesn't understand the Constitution, who doesn't understand the value of First Amendment rights.
It's not even that they don't understand. They're actively malicious.
Yeah.
That they see you as a political enemy and they're going to do everything they can to hurt you.
Oh, no, I agree. Raceland 9000, thanks for the rants for pants, by the way, and hashtag lawsuits for pants. Raceland says, I bet LawTube helps you get a legal defense fund like they did with C. Boozy. I don't know, maybe if it goes that way. Right now, we're having the lawyers look at it to see if we're going to have, if I need to fundraise for it. And once I do, I will. I will let you know. Upon the Horizon says, Megan, you sound hysterical. What do I sound hysterical about? Do you mean funny or do you mean I sound crazy? You're going to have to
clarify that. I could go either way.
I have to define that. Medium hysterical though? Is it medium hysterical? Because that's really my jam is right there.
You're hysterical, Megan.
Yeah.
Well, so, you're being hysterical.
Yeah, right. It could be either one. It's hard to tell. So I've really enjoyed having you here today, Steve. I got to get running here soon.
I know. Boy, we could do it again sometime soon, but it's been a blast.
We should do it again sometime soon. And I'm going to keep reading your book, and I'm sure I'll have more questions for you because your book is great. So send me an email with your address and I'll send you mine so you can have Believe Evidence as well. But thanks for being here.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And thanks for the chat. And boy, it's great to get to know you one-on-one like this. And I'm in such awe. This is the best thing about the book is I get to talk to people like you and really, you don't, I mean, I'm serious.
I think it's really how long you've been reading my columns.
I've been reading it for a long time. And like I said, I don't even pay it. It's like, oh, that's great. Oh, it's Megan Fox. Yes. So keep up the good work. And anybody, if people want to buy my book, go to crimelaw.net. And I think I'm going to be on Recadas here in a few minutes. But
oh, good. Is he still at the sentencing? Is that what they're doing?
It's not the one I really want to do because
it's really bad. I can't listen to it anymore. It's like hurting me to listen to the
and this is the victim impact statements.
Victim impact statements. I listened to Jackson's mother and I had to turn it off and I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's not exactly fun.
Look, I don't know how some father hasn't killed this guy yet. I really don't. I don't understand how.
Well, I think the court was shut down for a bomb threat of some sort in the last few hours. But I might go over to Legal Vices. That trial is much better. Much cleaner, but I don't know. I've been on Legal Vices this morning, so I'm just I've got so much vacation time. I'm one of these guys, these public servants that never takes vacation time. And then I found out this year, at the end of the year, I'm going to lose like 80 hours of vacation if I don't take it. So I'm like, I got to take off. So I've been taking off and doing these live streams and stuff. That's why I've been all over the place.
Oh, that's good. Well, good for you. Enjoy your vacation. I might head over to Vices. I might look and see what's going on over there. We'll see.
That's a great trial.
He keeps sending me links, and I'm like, every day I'm like, I can't today, but maybe I could this afternoon if he's still going. If he's still going, maybe I'll meet you over there.
Poor guy works so hard,
I know. All righty. Well, we will see you again soon, I'm sure, Steve. Steve Gosney. Guys, go to crimelaw.net and check out his book. Thanks for being here, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you later.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right, guys. It has been fun. It has been quite a day. Don't forget, I'm really bad at the grift. You know, I need to get better at it. So get over to meganfox.locals.com where you can follow me over there for free. And channel, you can do that through Locals. If you want, you can go to the merch store, which is in the description right below this video. Buy something nice for yourself and your family. Other than that, see me on pjmedia.com where I'm going to be writing about that father who just won that case. It's going to be great. So I'll see you soon. I'm Megan Fox. Find me on pjmedia.com. See you guys.